from downtown San Francisco, this is 95.7 The Game.
Oh, good morning, everyone. A happy Saturday to all. Evan Giddings and Dan Devone back in the saddle. Our man Steven Risotto behind the glass, ready to get you set for Warriors this week from 9 to noon every single Saturday. Dan, my man, what's going on? It's been too long.
I like the tie. I like the tie.
I'm allergic to buttons, but I decided to dress up just for you.
Yeah, no, it's. I feel like it's Sunday, or actually, at St. Ignatius, we would, or even Stewart Hall, you had a little, confessionals on Wednesday, Sunday tie. You had to be, buttoned down, man. Dude, anytime I see somebody in a tie, I'm thinking about it's like I got to go to church. But go ahead.
We got confessionals outside.
I saw that.
You haven't seen those things?
No, that's pretty wild.
These mobile soundproof booths that they have put inside of our studio. I feel like I'm getting ready to talk to the Father.
No, speaking of confessionals, that's right. So I think that's sort of state of the art. And for those at home that don't know what it is that we're talking about, you should probably detail it better than I. Basically, it's a soundproof box in the middle of this workspace where you can walk in and do your business. And when I say do your business, I'm talking about getting on one of your personal phone calls so you're not disruptive of other people. Because you can only text to a certain degree, and there's only so much you can do. Sometimes you need the spoken word, and so that you're not being disruptive to people in the cubicle next to you, you go into this little box, and you do what you got to do.
Which I find funny because we're the most disruptive people in this place, and they pack us into these these small little soundproof studios. And the moment we come out, they have to ask the other salespeople to go into their own studio. It's the closest thing that I've seen because I didn't grow up with phone booths. I feel like it's the closest thing that I've seen to that. I've heard phone booths always referenced, and I myself have referenced a phone booth before, but I've never actually been inside one.
Yeah, phone booths are not good if you're claustrophobic because they have there's stories of people that get stuck in those things because they have this door that would close behind you.
Clark Kent?
And it's unlike this one. So there are many of an incident of people getting locked inside of a phone booth. But yeah, what's your favorite go-to? Getting changed in a phone booth?
Oh, yeah. Well, I got the suit and tie. Well, I don't have the suit on, but I have the tie on. Yeah, I feel like all I need is a pair of glasses, and then I could just rip my shirt open. There's going to be an S on my chest, and I can fly down to Santa Clara after the show.
You got the Broncos tonight taking on Wazoo. That being, of course, what is Wazoo? Washington State
Cougars. Yeah, right. the Cougs. Well, yeah, I feel like you should know this from being up in Seattle. There is a term, and I promise we'll get into what we actually have to talk about today. But Cougan it. Actually, it actually does kind of remind me of the way that the Warriors
Which
have
is not a good
playing.
reference.
No, it's not. If you've couged something, you have blown a game, you have fallen in some sort of terrible, tragic fashion, and at least until the Minnesota game, it feels like that's what the Warriors were doing. They've been couging it for the last month and a half.
Well, there's a lot to talk about, young fella, when it comes to your Golden State Warriors. I don't know where we want to sort of start to unpack this thing.
Well, so the last time we talked,
on a good note in the win, but go ahead.
No,
I'll
I was going
follow
to say,
your lead.
The last time we talked, I mean, I'm trying to remember what has transpired since then. There's the incendiary comments from Kerr, and Draymond. They had the win against Minnesota, which was preceded by arguably their worst loss of the season in Toronto. They blew the game they didn't blow the game. They just got housed by Miami. What was the last time we discussed where this team was at?
Yeah, it's been sort of a downward spiral for a while. I'm beginning to think, and I've just come to the conclusion that the 12-3 team was an aberration. Mm-hmm. And I think that this 7-18 team over the last 25 games is who the Golden State Warriors are.
Oof.
Yeah. I think that the Golden State Warriors are a sub-500 basketball team, and the idea of beginning to rebuild, reset, transition, something that I have been pounding the table for a while now, I hope it's beginning to settle in and becoming more of a reality because that's where we're going. At least that's where we're headed, in my estimation.
Yeah, I'm not there yet, and maybe I'm a little more, I don't know, just the younger, glass-half-full, optimistic type of fella, at least for today. And I will be that guy. I will unsheath my sword and swing to defend the Warriors as much as I can. I don't think that they're certainly the 12-3 team that they started, but I don't think that they're this bad. I think that the game against Minnesota to me is the blueprint of what they have to do. The question is, can they replicate it? Like, I saw an energy and competitive fire that I haven't seen probably since like the first 15 games of the season. I just wonder why it took them so long to get back to that point. Because I think it's funny that, like, no matter who's been in for the Warriors this year, they've kind of played the same. Like, they have a plus 500 record when Curry's out. They have an around 500 record when Draymond's out. They strangely have a sub 500 record when Kuminga's out. But they've kind of played the same no matter who's in, whether they're healthy, whether they're banged up. And I think it's because, to your point, the roster doesn't lend you to believe that this is a world-beating team. Like, from roster spots 2 through 15, they're kind of interchangeable on average, and as a result, it's produced a 20-20 record.
They're inferior. I think that's the best way to describe it when you think about that roster, 2 through 15. Inferior in term, relatively speaking, when you stack them up against the top 6 teams in the Western Conference.
Yeah.
I just don't know how much can you squeeze out of a Lindy Waters, a GP2, a Buddy Hield, a Pajemski, a Trace Jackson Davis, all good players, which leads me to my next point. And there's a lot to get into when it comes to Steph Curry and the theorizing that I've heard and read about.
We will play some of that soundbite.
Yeah, but I think that, that's sort of where they're at. That this idea that they're underwhelming or not playing up to their potential. What is the potential? Just what's the ceiling for the Pajemskis and the Trace Jackson Davis and the Buddy Hields and the Lindy Waters and sort of the thrust of this basketball team? I'm not hating on the Warriors. I'm just saying that the quicker you come to the realization that this is an opportunity to destroy, or at least you're at the crossroads and it's time to strip this thing to the studs and start anew, the quicker you get there. So the space they're in right now is painful.
Yeah, because it's right in the middle. Like, they're stuck in the middle. And I think they're stuck between... to me, you have to look at it logically. Like, in Fantasyland, yes, I agree that you could just strip this thing down to the studs and start over anew. But to me, I guess, Dan, I don't believe that that's realistic just because you have Curry on the roster. Like, leave Draymond out of it. To me, he's in a different category. But you still have Curry on the roster. And I don't think that you can fully lean into a rebuild or a reset while you still have him. I think you kind of have to slowly wade in, which is what they've been doing. Like, I think we're going to look back at this season as a transition into whatever the Warriors end up becoming. But I also don't think that this is a season, to your point, because it doesn't sound like you're in the cash everything in camp, that you're in the trade this guy, trade that guy, trade these future draft picks to try and get the 5th seed or something like that.
To get a first-round loss against OKC? I mean, what's the point?
Well, I actually do think that there is room for this team to improve. I do think that this team can make the play-in, and that to me is what they're probably aiming for. Like, to me, the goal of this season should never have been, which has been sold to us, a championship. Like, that to me was a fool's errand. But trying to get to the 6th seed, that to me is a realistic goal for this team. And it's because, honestly, the rest of the West is, like, they have their up and down nights just like the Warriors do. But what I do think is that this 9-game stretch they have coming up, which is pretty much all home games. They play 8 home games. They play 1 game in SAC. That's kind of where I'm at as far as having a final bit of belief in this basketball team. Because after that, I think 20 of their last 33 games are on the road. And those, no matter what, are going to be hard to win. The fact that they went 500 on this recent road trip just shows you, like, you might lose to Toronto, but you could beat Minnesota. You still end up 500. To me, this last homestand, long homestand, I think is their prime opportunity to kind of push forward, because while they're 2 games from being in 13th, they're also 2.5 games from the 6th seed. So, and that's kind of where they are. Like, they're just another team in the West. And I think that also means that they have the ability to climb up the standings if they can get their bleep together.
They're also tied. I mean, that's one way to look at it. And maybe I'm looking at this as the glass is half empty.
You've been sitting in that New York cold for the last week and a half. I mean, you're down. I get it.
No, I'm not down. I just think that the quicker people come to the realization that you need to start anew, the quicker you get to where it is that you eventually want to be, which is a relative prominent basketball team that's contending for things in the Western Conference. Yes, we can say, okay, the Warriors are in the thick of things and just a few games removed from the Lakers in the 6th seed, and why couldn't they leapfrog the Mavericks or or the T-Wolves or the Kings or the Suns, all teams that are in front of them.
And all teams that got problems. Maybe not Sacks.
Granted, I'll tell you what they need to do is I don't think that they're leapfrogging anybody. What they want to do, just for respectability matters, is look in the rearview mirror because you got to hold off the San Antonio Spurs. I'm telling you that this is not going to go well for the Golden State Warriors going forward. And it's just because you're inferior in so many different ways, and it just comes down to talent. Now, they own the T-Wolves for whatever reason, and Minnesota has their own sort of problems. I'm reading articles about Randall's on his way out. Look at him to get shipped at the trade deadline. But the Golden State Warriors are just, when I think about the Suns, the Mavericks, the Kings, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Nuggets, and I look at their rosters and I look at the Warriors roster, I just, at the end of the day, I just don't see how the Warriors could somehow wiggle or maneuver themselves into the upper half of that Western Conference because they just pound for pound can't match up.
Well, the upper half is going to be tough. But again, if we're looking at like Dallas, I mean, the reason why they're struggling is because Luke has been out for a while and Kyrie is now as a bulging disc. Injuries are what is going to hold that team back. But the fact still stands that they've been falling and they're now 4 games above 500. The Timberwolves, you're right, they got issues. And the Karl Anthony Towns trade is looking like probably the worst one of this summer in regards to taking a team that was in the Western Conference Finals to a team that now is a play-in team, which is crazy to think about. Like, they were on the way up. They were supposed to be next up along. It was supposed to be them and OKC. Yeah. And now they're struggling just to stay above 500.
By the way, Karl Anthony Towns, you cannot be wearing a Philadelphia Eagle jersey on the bench at the Garden. What are you doing? Go ahead.
That might be the most New York take I've heard all week.
He was out. He sat out when I was there on Tuesday, and on the bench.
You were at the Garden?
I wasn't there, but I'm watching. He had a Philadelphia Eagle jersey. Now look it. You do not wear a Philadelphia Eagle jersey anywhere in New York, especially if you play for the Knicks. But on the bench? Are you out of your mind?
He's from New Jersey.
Yeah.
He's probably an Eagles fan.
I don't care. You can't do that. You can't do that in New York, especially when you're the centerpiece of the reclamation project that is the New York Knicks. You're bringing the Knicks back into you're putting them back on the map, and you're the guy. You're the new Patrick Ewing, and you're rocking a Philadelphia Eagle jersey. Now, no offense to people out here in the West, and I know there's rivalries with L.A. and San Francisco, but it runs deep when you're talking Philly, New York. You just don't go there, my man.
Maybe that's where I'm soft. The thing is, actually, I believe it was the next game, he wore something completely different. Like they were.
He changed at halftime.
Yeah, they were juxtaposing his fits. Someone got to him from the PR department and said, "Take the bird off."
Yeah, no, and he went on he put on a Knick jersey. He was vilified, man, and they're still after that guy, man. WFAN is going nuts as we speak.
Well, I'm not going to kill him. You know what? Carl, if you want to come over to Golden State where things are a little bit nicer, a little softer, we will open our arms up to you because he would automatically become, well, depending on some nights, maybe their best player.
He's been a monster.
Yes, he has. Well, Tibbs also going to run him into the ground, but he seems to like it. 888-957-9570 is the number. Dan Devone, Evan Giddings with you on Warriors this week, 9 to noon, every single Saturday here on 95.7 The Game. Talking about some big picture stuff with the Warriors as they stand. They are the definition of a 500 team. They are 20-20. They are 10-10 on the road. They just finished up a 2-2 road trip, and they prepare for an 8-9 stretch at home. Let's get out to Matthew in the city. Wants to get in on the Dubs conversation. Hasn't thought he's been sitting on for a while. Matthew, what's going on? Good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. What I wanted to say was my concern about the Warriors is that the 2022 title team,
Oh, boy. That sounded like a great thought, Matthew. I'm sorry. Please call back. You're kind of cutting out there.
We got to get you in this little booth that we have here in the studio. Or
you might be calling from the booth.
Yeah.
Because we lost him. Matthew, call back. I don't know if he was going to where one thought that I have had about the 2022 championship, Dan, is, I mean, that's the whole reason why we're in this position is because they won the last title. They leaned all the way into that roster, and as a result, they've kind of been handicapped by it. Like, they've been handicapped to some extent by the Wiggins contract. I would say the biggest anchor or anvil from that championship has been Draymond Green and his $4 for $100 million. And the fact that they weren't able to get anything out of Jordan Poole and flipped him for a 38-year-old point guard who now plays for your favorite team, the San Antonio Spurs. It's the price of winning. It's the price of a title. And the Warriors are starting to deal with that. And I think they're kind of in no man's land in regards to where they go to try and get out of it. Like, I think they did a pretty good job this summer of alleviating some of that baggage, a la Klay Thompson, but they're stuck with a lot of average players as a result.
They are, but you wouldn't trade in that title.
No.
Right?
No.
So
I wouldn't.
Of course, and I don't think anyone else would. But you're spot on. It has a lot to do with the baggage and the anchor and what they're tethered to right now. If they really had foresight, what they should have done is they should have, and I know this is so much, you talk about Monday morning quarterback. What they should have done is move those pieces sooner rather than later. And if you're really, really on top of things as a GM, as an organization, you have to be able to see this. And they should have traded Klay Thompson, not wait for him to be an unrestricted free agent. They should have traded Draymond Green and got pieces back when he still had high market value. Now, I don't see, Ev, I just do not see how any of this is going to end well for the Golden State Warriors. I really don't. Maybe you can illuminate me and somehow enlighten me as to something that's out there in terms of a trade or maybe even getting into the lottery or draft picks, but I don't see. This to me looks like a not only a rebuild, but a long rebuild.
Well, rebuilds generally aren't short. I mean, even say...
Well, but think about OKC.
Well, I'll tell you how they did it, though.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just the Paul George trade. Like, 3 straight years, which is why they have, for example, like the Philadelphia 76ers, number 1 pick this year. So, like, they're going to have a lottery pick in a year that they probably win 65 games. In 3 consecutive seasons, they didn't just flip Paul George. They traded Paul George, then Russell Westbrook, then Chris Paul, all for a lot of first-round capital, in addition to having players and remaining competitive. That strategy, to me, even for them, still took like 3 years.
Yeah. But there was a vision, right? I mean, what they decided to do, and Sam Presti is brilliant, and what they decided to do is that we're not going to win with these guys. Let's push reset and start this anew. Like, they were basically similar to what it is that the Warriors are going through right now. Except I would argue that their trade assets had more value because they were a little bit younger. Chris Paul still had some cachet, same with Paul George, and the same with Westbrook. The Warriors have waited too long because they flipped that. They still have picks that they haven't used in that SGA trade, which is great. They got 5 first-round picks for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah.
Who might be the MVP this year.
And I think they own the Clippers' first-rounders like through 2030 or something.
And here you are with SGA as your cornerstone and all these young pieces. The Warriors, they had an opportunity, I think, to do that. Maybe with Klay back in the day, a couple of years back. Maybe with Draymond. You're not going to move Steph, but now it's too late. You can't move Draymond and get that's anything near that in return. So you're really sort of stuck. But I would think that if I'm the Warriors, I would look to move Draymond Green. If I can get, at least I'd be open to calls. If somebody feels as though they're Draymond Green away from winning the title, whether that's Houston or maybe it's the Nuggets or somebody that needs a veteran leader or a defensive presence and are willing to overpay, I'm saying, hey, Mike Dunleavy here on line 1. What do you want to talk about? What do you got?
But this is something that I struggle with. It's like, just because you're not contending for a title doesn't mean you have to crater the franchise. Like, I don't think that's how good businesses work. If it's a lean year, you don't just sell off everything. You persevere, you endure, and you try and make the moves proper to get back into contention. The contention part is, I think, where we, along with, honestly, the Warriors, because I've told you this, we've discussed it, the issue that I have has been what they've been trying to sell us on. Like, Warriors fans are not idiots. I don't think. The fact that they came into the season being like, we got to maximize this window and win a 5th title and do it all, their actions have been completely different. And so the fact that Curry, for example, or Kerr or Draymond in the last week, and we'll get into some of those comments, have talked about the recalibration that feels like it's happening inside the organization. That's what I think we need to adopt as media members, as fans, recalibrating what our expectation of this team is. They're no longer championship contenders, but that doesn't mean they still can't fight and be competitive in what has been a middling Western Conference. That's the way that I look at it. So the fact that they're able to get that game in Minnesota, that's a step in the right direction. You play a beatable Washington Wizards team, which, by the way, Warriors Live with Mark Grandy and Wrap Up will be on at 4:30 for a 5:30 tip tonight.
Dan Devone.
Are you on today?
Yes, I am.
Oh, my gosh. They keep flipping the script on me.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it.
I got the call from Luke out in after I was maybe 2 beers deep, and he said, "Hey, you want to do the show on Saturday?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Forgetting that there's NFL football tonight, but no, let's go Warriors.
Well, you're going to be able to lock it. Wait, who's it? It's KC Texans at 1:30, and then who is the late game?
I don't know. Ravens?
No, the Warriors do. Yeah. Golden State, Washington.
If you want to tune in, you're going to listen to somebody who's just going to rag on Jordan Poole for half an hour.
Well, I can fight you on that, but we'll do that a little bit later. Because right now I want to get into a couple of callers. You got some topics they want to discuss. 888-957-9570 is the number. Oscar's out in Stockton. Evan, lighten up. I think you want to talk to Dan, Oscar. What's up, man? Good morning.
Good morning, you guys. Dan. I'm glad you got the call tonight, too, because you can witness the Warriors comeback.
Yeah.
My thing is that you just said it. I mean, exactly what you just said. The Warriors are good business. We are rebuilding right now, but we're not just going to tear it down and go down to the bottom. We're going to stay relevant, and that's why they came out and talked about it. Steph and everybody, they know right now we're under the 2nd April, and we said a title right now. But we're not going to get it because we're not going to trade the farm. We are rebuilding right now. And that's why Steph and Dre and Kerr came out and said the same thing. But what we are not going to do is just give up. We're going to wait till the young talent we got, Kuminga especially. This is why I'm not going to trade. When Kuminga come back, we get back healthy, we're going to play it out. We might make another trade around the rim. We might make another trade, but we're not going to trade the farm. And that's why Steph said that. And I'm with that. Stay competitive. In the Warrior Nation, right now we just spoiled. But right now we got to stick with the plan. The game plan is to stay under 2nd April. Don't sell our soul for some of these kids that's playing. I'm watching the NBA and stay relevant. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to turn it around. I'm telling you guys, that's a good leader what Steph did, because Steph is with the program. And he knows that we wait till the summertime come, we'll pick up a good free agent. I'm telling you guys right now, I'm glad what you just said, Evan, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to stay relevant, but what we're going to do is shock a lot of people by making the top 6. I'm not saying we're going to win it this year, but we're going to be relevant and not trade the farm. Good business owners does that. We're not going to the bottom and come back up. We're going to stay relevant, and we're going to keep our young talent. We also got trade. Like you said, we got picks. We're going to wait till the summer to do all that. So just be patient. I'm with the Warriors. And one thing about the West, I know you guys have been watching it. We go on a 7-game win streak like we about to go do. We're going to be right back up to the top, man. You guys have a good day, man. I love you guys' show. Keep pumping it up because I'm out here listening all morning, all day long to you guys. Good job, fellas.
Thank you, Oscar. That's the 209 talking right there.
Oh, 209.
Yeah,
Central Valley shout out. There you go.
Out of Stockton.
I've
yes,
never
sir.
met a bad guy named Oscar. I can't hate on Oscar. Seriously.
The Grouch?
I don't think I've met ever in my lifetime. I don't know a lot of Oscars. I've always been like friendly people. There's something about the name, the gene pool. When you name your son Oscar.
Have you never watched
guaranteed.
Sesame Street?
Well, I mean, come on.
That's literally the first person I think most kids meet in their life.
But the first thing I got Oscar.
Well,
you're
they
still
don't watch it anymore.
Listen, my man, when you're talking about mortgaging the future, I'm with you. Jonathan Kuminga's not for sale.
Well,
the kids will hang on to. Draft picks I'll hang on to. Let me ask you this.
Okay.
Is Draymond Green the future?
No. He's the past.
Well, that's my point. So
but you're stuck with him.
I'm saying that if somebody wants to overpay, and I said specifically Draymond Green, I didn't talk about draft picks and I didn't talk about the quote-unquote kids. Yeah. We'll get into that. But Draymond Green, if somebody's like, that's the difference between me and winning a title this year, what do you want, Golden State Warriors? I'll give you up a prospect. I'll give you up maybe a Jalen Brunson tomorrow that hasn't been undisclosed, or an SGA that's laying in the weeds, or some draft picks. I'll pull that trigger.
Well, and as we continue the conversation...
Don't get me going on Zion, the big fella's
I know. You love your Zion, and he loves himself some gumbo. I do think he passed his last weight clause, his last weigh in. He's also back on the floor finally. Which
did you
is
see his windmill in his first game back?
Yeah. Did you see him miss the team flight?
Yeah, I did.
You see him already get suspended?
No, his first day
Wow,
back.
dude.
Honestly, if Zion came to the Bay, I would take it just for these kinds of stories. Like that's who the Warriors are not trying to become, a sideshow. And as much as I do love Zion Williamson and his generational talent, my God. Can you imagine?
He needs to change the scenery. Both New Orleans and Zion need to separate.
He gives New Orleans a bad rap. That's not a bad city. Like, New Orleans has become known, and unfortunately, there's tragedy that's gone on there, and our thoughts and prayers are with them. But it's like New Orleans being known for, well, I guess no law, but it's like Zion has turned this place into some cesspool of the NBA where I don't feel like it's ever been known for that.
You ever had a Cuban sandwich in New Orleans?
I've never been to New Orleans. I have had a Cuban, though, and a cigar.
Okay.
But...
A Cuban as in a sandwich or a cigar. We're not talking about females.
No, we're not.
I always need to clarify with you, young man.
Check all three boxes. All right, on the other side, we're going to get to your call, Cameron and Antioch. I want to get into Kuminga, and also the return of the prodigal son. Jordan Poole comes back to the Bay Area for the Washington Wizards. Go. There's also a player on that team that I think the Warriors might be able to get in a trade, and it's not named Jordan Poole. All that and more along with Curry's comments. Dan's got a fiery take he's got about...
We do not want Kuzma. Go ahead.
It's not Kuzma. 888-957-9570 is the number. Evan and Dan back after this.
Why pay more for prescriptions? Stop overpaying and start saving with SingleCare.
Keep it going.
Yeah, well, no, I love the tune, although my ears perked.
Start spreading the news. You're leaving today. I want to be a part of it. New York, New York, your vagabond shoes.
I'm trying to figure out what
They are longing
is.
to stray.
Dan Sinatra Devone.
And step around the heart of it. New York. God, I cannot sing, man.
Well done, Dan. Well done.
Do you want to be on top? All right.
Well,
Jesus.
on top of the Big Apple.
Riz is just, those crazy fingers are all over the board, man.
See, this is where producers learn how to take the next step. Pasta he's evolving before our very eyes. He's wiggling his way into the show to create, I guess, more of a lighter feel. Although I still don't get the New York reference. Washington's in town tonight. Dan Devone, as we found out, will be on Warriors Live at 4:30 for the 5:30 tip. Looking forward to that. Home game. Jordan Poole comes home. Before we dig into Poole, before we dig into Curry's comments, I do want to get Cameron Antioch into the conversation. Cam's on. You're on with Evan and Dan here on Warriors This Week. Cam, what's going on?
Good morning, man. I didn't even know y'all was on Saturday, man. Appreciate that. How y'all doing today?
Fantastic. Every Saturday, Cam. Welcome to the program.
Okay. Let me check you guys out. But quick question. How long can I talk real quick? Because every time I call Bonte, they cut me off before I even get to the nitty-gritty.
Well, you're 30 seconds, Cam.
30 seconds. Okay. I don't understand how the media does not talk about Kerr and his coaching. His small lineups are the reason that we keep losing games. Just like last year, there was no reason for CP3 to be closing games. He's not playing a player that when we went 9-2, we had a whole different offense. After that, Kerr went back to the motion, playing small lineups, and you see where we at right now. Kerr is the reason. If Kerr is leaving in 2 years, when Curry supposedly might leave, why is he still coaching? And we need to get somebody in to start doing coaching Kuminga, the young guy that they praise so much and want to build the future. Kerr is about to be out of there. There was no reason for him to get an extension when we were the 10th seed. I know he did good in the past, but look at the last 3 years. He studied Moody and Kuminga's growth by playing Lamb, Kojo, Jerome over them when they could be miles ahead right now. And if Kuminga didn't go to the media, he will probably still be getting DNPs and on the bench. Kerr is the problem that we need to get rid of. If Kerr leaves, I promise you we'll be back where we was at. He is the problem. His rotations, taking players out when they get hot. You see Steph looking at him crazy, like sometimes say, Steph, I'm not coming out. Because why are you taking people out? You got to adjust and do different things. He does the same thing every time. Last night we almost lost because he had the 3-guard lineup. That is over. We don't have the same players we had in 2015, 2016 to keep doing small ball. We don't have no advantages, and he needs to go. He is not adept. We win a game by doing pick and rolls, changing things up, and then he goes right back to the motion offense, and we get blew out. Something has to change, and there was no reason to trade fucking. I'm sorry. Jordan Poole.
Bye, Cam. No, bye. Sorry, buddy. Well, we gave you about 2 minutes, and then you dropped the bomb.
Now we know why. Now you know why you don't get run in 95-7 the game.
Yeah, no. Feel free to call back maybe next weekend, Cam. We appreciate it. We appreciate the energy. Look, I think there is some frustration from Warriors fans with Steve Kerr, and I get it, but. You know, it's asking him this season to kind of put lipstick on a pig has been his task.
Look, we never want to bottom feed when a team's struggling, especially when it comes to Steve Kerr. Get rid of Steve Kerr. That's the easy way out. Because really, what is it that he's got to work with? I always think that this comes down to personnel. And small ball or what's the version of the Warriors going big? Trace Jackson-Davis at 6'9"? I mean, it's just you're trying to make the most out of a team that, again, I think is inferior when it comes to talent. However, to Cam's point, let me ask you, Ev, when this sort of thing happens, sometimes it's the start of a trend. What's going on in Sacramento?
Yeah.
With one of his proteges and Mike Brown, and now you're seeing the success with Doug Christie. Clearly, Joe Maz, a young coach out in Boston, who is beginning to, a lot of people thought it was just the talent. He certainly has made a name for himself. The best team in the NBA, in my estimation, OKC, and Mark Daigneault's not even 40 years of age. Are we seeing a trend where Steve Kerr is sort of, the bus has left the station and it doesn't include Kerr any longer?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a young man's league. I think that does apply to coaching also. But I think Spoelstra is still a pretty good coach. I still think that some of the older guys around the league, I mean, I know
Kenny Atkinson.
Well, Kenny Atkinson, he's not, yeah, he's older, but this is his second chance. I guess like fresh voices is kind of how I would look at it. I mean, Kerr is certainly one of the elder statesmen, but for Warriors fans that don't like Steve Kerr, and I'm not there yet where Cam is, but he's only got a year and a half left on his contract. I don't think that Steve Kerr, the way things are trending for the Warriors, will be here after the end of his contract, because I just don't think that at age 39 for Steph, age 37 for Draymond, they're in a position where they're still the focal point of whatever is left of the Warriors. You know, they'll still be the biggest draws, but if you're building around a 39 and a 37-year-old, you're in trouble. And so I think that it will take a new voice and probably a younger one. But you're right, like the fresher voices around the NBA, those are the guys. I mean, the Joe Mazzulas, the Kenny Atkinsons, the Mark Daigneaults, even to some extent, like the Chris Finches. Really, I think the one who's kind of in that sweet spot in the middle would be like a Mike Malone. You know, I think that he still has a lot of respect in that locker room and has done some good things in Denver. But you're right, like Steve Kerr's probably on the back end of his career as a head coach.
Yeah, and so I remember Bill Walsh once said this back in the day with the 49ers, that it's not necessarily a reflection on Steve Kerr and what it is that he is or is not doing as far as a head coach and going small on the X's and O's and the schematics. But it's more of just simply your team needs a change. And sometimes change is good. Somebody once said it's like driving down the highway and you just roll down that window and get some fresh air. Mm-hmm. And it's nothing more than to change and a change of scenery. And to steal your phrase, a fresh voice. And I think as this team ushers out the sort of dynastic run and you are leaning in on Jonathan Kuminga and whatever this new version is, I think it's almost as if the writing's on the wall that you need someone else to do that and a younger voice. And again, it's not a reflection that Steve Kerr has lost it or is no longer a good coach. It's just sometimes an organization, especially when it comes to coaching, you need change simply for the sake of change. That there has to be a renewed energy, and you have to feel as though there's a different culture and a different way of doing things, especially when a team is looking to rebuild. And I know that we stay away from that word, but I'm telling you, Warrior fans and everybody that's listening this morning, that the sooner you get your arms around that, the quicker you return to prominence.
Yeah, I think this is a good call from the 415. Ty Lue, pardon me, was on Steve Kerr's staff for the Olympics. He's done quietly a really good job with the Clippers team. I think many people, myself included, expected to take a step back. 203 also makes a good point. These coaches you mentioned have the best talent in their prime. Yeah, I agree. I mean, Jason Kidd is kind of an older guy, and he's been there for a while. I don't think that Kerr is. I don't think that Kerr is one of the worst coaches that people are painting him out to be. I think that the Warriors will move on from him if his voice becomes stale. But as long as he has the respect of Steph and to some extent Draymond, I think he'll be around.
Well, I think he's going to stay around. And of course, this is going to be up to him because he's such an interesting guy that he's just not exclusive to just basketball or the NBA. I mean, there's so many things he can do from a communal standpoint. I don't know if he wants to get into politics or whatever it is that he's going to do. His next step is, I wouldn't be surprised if it has nothing to do with sports or basketball. But I don't think that certainly if I'm Joe Lacob and you come to an agreement that you want a new voice in the locker room and it's not Steve Kerr as the head coach, I certainly would extend an offer to him to stay with the organization in some capacity. Whether he becomes the new Jerry West, but he is still so smart And in terms of building that culture, in terms of doing it the right way, being cerebral, not emotional, and just he's a smart guy. So I would think that he would stay in some capacity with the Golden State Warriors following his coaching career.
It's funny you mentioned that, sticking with the organization, because I found it fascinating how united he, along with Curry and Draymond, were in speaking about the future of the organization. And I don't know, lends me to believe potentially they might be involved or want to be involved after their head coaching and respective playing days are done. But then after they won against the Timberwolves, it was like Curry thought he might have messed up a little bit, or that his message got misconstrued, because here's what he had to say.
All the Twitter fingers who's got deals that we need to make can kind of just shut up a little bit and let us figure this thing out. Like we know we can be competitive. We showed that toughness tonight. Obviously, every team is trying to find ways to get better, and for us, we've been great for a very long time. This is just a unique year where we have to be able to stay relevant and give ourselves a chance and just have some life in a playoff series. And we have a whole lot of confidence that we can beat anybody. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's it. I think there's a lot from it. What?
He used the stupid word.
Yeah, he also told people to shut up.
I know, that's so Steph Curry.
That's like the feistiest we've seen Steph, I think, towards the fan base.
That's comparable to an F-bomb for anybody else.
Yeah, he's not quite cursing, but might as well be. I think number one, he knew that he kind of messed up a little bit. Like, I don't know when you heard the original comments from him and the rest of the brain trust, but it did feel kind of white flaggish. Like, we got to think about the future. We got to leave it in a better position than we found it.
Wait, I want to revisit your comments previously when I said that Steve Kerr may get an opportunity to move upstairs.
Yeah.
And then can you explain that a little bit more in detail? What it is that you were thinking about? Well,
I think that Curry and Draymond want to be a part of the Warriors organization in some capacity. I don't know if it's...
So your point is they were actually talking about things from a managerial standpoint as opposed to players. Why mortgage the future if I'm eventually going to be an owner if I'm Steph? I'm assuming that's what you're thinking with Steph Curry. Is that
not necessarily, but like the way that Dirk Nowitzki is involved with the Mavericks. Like, he's still around, and he's still obviously a liked character, and he has a relationship with Luka Doncic, who was a rookie when Dirk was in his last season. Like, I think that Curry and Draymond both want to be a part of the team, in the same way that maybe, like, the Warriors actually have done a pretty good job, I think, of rewarding their champions and keeping that sort of culture in varying positions. Like, Zaza is a part of the organization. Sean Livingston, up until last season, I believe, was a part of the organization. Andre Iguodala is not, but he's around.
Yeah.
Like, they have pieces from their past that still remain. And I don't think that there's two better. Well, one better than Steph Curry. But I think that Draymond he's probably going to move into media or broadcasting. And I think there was a report that he actually is in negotiations with Amazon, who's going to be a part of the new NBA package when the CBA comes to fruition. I think next season they start like NBC and stuff. But I don't see why those two guys wouldn't want to be involved. And if they are, why would they want to mortgage everything for now?
When it comes to Steph, I wouldn't be surprised. See, I get it when it comes to Livingston, and although Iguodala is not officially with the team, or Zaza Pachulia, because Steph is Steph. And I don't know how this works out from an ownership standpoint, but I wouldn't be surprised if there hasn't been some sort of a conversation, much like that of LeBron is very vocal about how he wants to bring a professional basketball team to Las Vegas and wants to be an owner. I don't think Steph is along those lines. I don't think Steph would be an advisor as much as Tom Brady-esque. And let me have a percentage of this basketball team. Is that on the table? Because that's where I see Steph moving. If he was to move upstairs, I see him getting a piece of this pie. For everybody else, it's more of a consulting sort of fee, but not when it comes to Steph. Simply because he's Steph. And
I don't think Curry's like Brady, though. Like Brady wants, I think, to make legitimate decisions. Like, he's involved in coaching hirings, and I don't know. Steph doesn't strike me as that kind of guy. But I do think that they want to be with the Warriors for a long time. And I also think that should give fans that are teetering on the, will Curry want to stay? Will he want to leave? I think it gives them more, I don't know, just kind of confidence that he's going to be around for the rest of his days. I also think being a legacy player means a lot to him.
Yeah, and I think being with the Warriors means a lot to him.
Well, but he's also the guy that, and this is where I think those comments are contradictory to we want to leave it in a better place. We're not going to mortgage things. Like, he was talking kind of like a front office member. This summer, he was the same guy that I believe in an interview with Mark Spears of Anscape said that, like, you think I'm just going to play for a bottom feeder? And he also said this after the game, which kind of, again, contradicts some of the comments that he made.
Anybody who thinks that I'm okay with just being an average basketball team is insane. Take whatever I said, I still stand on it, but it doesn't mean that you're not in a situation where you're trying to get better, make appropriate moves that help you do that. Mike knows that. We've talked about it. That's the expectation for me, trying to help lead the team where we want to go. Again, that doesn't mean that you're reckless. What people's definition of that is where I was talking about the Twitter fingers thing. Like, trade machines are fun, but what does that actually look like? So we're going to handle our business. Mike's going to handle his, see where we end up.
So he says anybody who thinks he's going to be on an average team is insane. Well, he's on an average team. Like, they're 20-20.
Let's just look back and reflect on the week that was.
It was a long week.
And what it is that he said initially, on the heels of what it is that Draymond Green said, that it's don't compromise, right? Don't mortgage the future. It's not going to essentially happen this year. We're not winning a championship. We're not a player away, so we're not going to move draft picks and young players because there's no one out there that's going to help this basketball team. And then the following day, he had to clean things up and clarify that, hey, listen, man, no one's more of a competitor than me. What does that tell you? I'll tell you what it says to me, and he's screaming at the heavens, is that we don't know what the hell we are. We have no identity. The Golden State Warriors are no longer somebody we could say, oh, that's the Warriors. No, we're trying to match timelines for Steph. No, we're not necessarily doing that anymore. We're sort of like, there's no reason to move all these guys because we got to think about the future. The Warriors are a team that they have no country. This is a team with no identity is essentially what I took out of this week. You want to know what the identity should be? And maybe we should do this. You know how you do those station IDs at the top of the hour?
Yeah, we got one, 10 minutes.
It's in the 95.7 The Game, KGMZ. This is what you got to do. Golden State Warrior fans, this is what we're going to listen at the top of the hour for the next 3 hours. And that is simply, Golden State, you're in a transition. You just don't know it. So put your arms around it and lean in. There's only two kinds of people in the NBA. It's the haves and the have-nots. It's the OKCs, right? It's the Cleveland Cavaliers, and it's all those other teams that might be a player or two away from contending and maybe dethroning or surpassing OKC and winning that championship. And then you have the teams that are at the bottom, that being the Utahs of the world, that being the Portlands, that being the Charlotte Hornets. You want to be one of those two. Because when you're Detroit, you at least know what it is that the game plan is. You have an identity. We are rebuilding with kids. This is a 2 or 3 year plan. We're going to challenge in the East. Or if we're Portland or whomever, or Utah, Danny Ainge didn't go there with his eyes closed. He knew exactly what it is he was getting into. In fact, he gets off on that sort of stuff. He wanted to build this thing from the ground up, get his guys, acquire draft picks, which is what it is that he's done, and the same thing out in Brooklyn, and then build anew and be the next OKC. When you're Golden State and you're playing this game with older players, you're just prolonging the inevitable. And what's the inevitable? You're going to be a bottom feeder. It's just up to you as to when it is that you want to get down there with everybody else.
Yeah, but I guess I reject the idea that just leaning into sucking is all of a sudden going to expedite your rebuild.
You don't have to lean in. You suck already.
Well, they don't suck as much as the Jazz suck or the Portland Trailblazers suck, the teams you just mentioned.
I don't know. 7-17 isn't very good. Or 8-17.
They're 20-20.
Well, aside from the 12-3 start.
Yeah, but you can't just take that off the table. Like,
yes, I can.
They did win those games, whether we were hoodwinked or not. They did win those games.
And Jeremy Lin was once the toast in New York for 10 days, scoring 30 points a game.
That's true. But again, okay, so if you do quote unquote suck, whatever. But like Portland, ever since they moved Damian Lillard, they haven't won more than 33 games in a season. You
got to make the right moves, mind you.
Yeah, you can still make right moves while trying to compete. Like, the Warriors were not built on number one overall picks. They were built on quality draft selections. If you don't believe, by the way, I think this is funny. Like, one of the reasons why a lot of fans don't have faith in the Warriors because of their draft history, right? Like, they haven't made good selections. Okay, so that's what you have to do. Like, there is no way around it. You don't just get to trade for the next great big thing. Like, cashing in all of your first-round picks and capital because you don't think you can use them wisely is not just going to circumvent this process that we're talking about. Like, your idea of rebuilding, Dan, is trying to rely on draft picks.
No, that's not necessarily what I'm saying here. I'm saying that you have to lean in on your youth. I would move Draymond if I could, and I would look to acquire more assets. And I'm not leaning exclusively on the draft picks. I'm still open to a trade that's going to bring me younger players, but those younger players are still going to be 2 or 3 years away from competing for being a players that I can be relying on in terms of NBA stars. It doesn't have to be exclusively through the draft. There's so many creative ways you can do it. You're a little bit limited with the second apron these days. I get it. But still, you have to come to the realization that this is a team that is starting anew. And it seems to me they're not there yet. And this week was a perfect example of that, where it's Steph Curry saying one thing on one day that, listen, we're waving the white flag, man. It ain't happening this year. And then the next day saying, no, man, I'm competitive as anybody. Let's win. To me, that's amorphous. Like, we don't know exactly what the hell's going on.
Well, I don't think they necessarily do either. I mean, that's kind of the most troublesome part about it, is they don't know what direction they're going in. But there is one guy, and we got to hit a break here. I see the calls coming, and we'll get to you, Austin. We'll get to you, Drew, on the other side, so please hang around. Warriors this week, Evan Giddings, Dan Devone. My thing is, there's been one guy who's seemingly been speaking for the organization, and I don't know why it irks me. And it's not Steph, but this guy has been in the thick of every single message that has come out that has to do with the front office, that has to do with the coaching, that has to do with development, that has to do with the players. And I'll tell you who that is on the other side. 888-957-9570.
All these teases. I still want to know who's that big guy in Washington that you like.
Oh, yeah. I'm just teasing everything, pushing it back. We got 2 hours left. Come on. All right. We'll be back after this on Warriors This Week.
This is Michael David from Seattle. I'm 51 years old, and 6 months ago, I started taking Andro 400 to increase my testosterone. Since then, I've lost 35 pounds of fat, and my waist went from size 38 to size 32. I have more energy, and I look and feel 20 years younger.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
The Warriors are moving in one direction, brought to you by First NorCal Credit Union. Evan Giddings and Dan Devone with you on Warriors This Week. Steven Risotto behind the glass with you as always. Yeah, Dan, we are in the middle of a transition, you and I. And I know I'm dressed like a friggin' narc, but I promise I'm going to my other job later. And Dan, you can catch, well, not another job, but later in the afternoon on Warriors Live at 4:30.
Yes, Warriors Live at 4:30, and then stay tuned for the post-game show.
Yeah, we
break down Jordan Poole.
Jordan Poole.
For we can go full hour taking calls about Jordan Poole.
Yeah.
You're in on Jordan Poole. He's having a good season.
He is. Would you have guessed he's shooting like 41% from three?
40% from three, yeah.
Doing pretty good for himself.
From the floor, yeah.
The prodigal son returns.
I saw a game of him. What was our last game out? The Suns? Anyways, yeah, they played the Suns. And this is so Jordan Poole. I don't want to launch into this guy. I think people know how I feel about him.
He certainly launches.
So he was on a switch with Kevin Durant. And I can't even do this justice. You have to see the play. And then he just leaves him. He's like out in front, like between the circles. And Kevin Durant wants to go. He's holding the ball. And then on a switch, Jordan Poole is now guarding him. Jordan Poole realizes, like, I shouldn't be guarding Kevin Durant. So he just leaves him. And Kevin Durant just walks into, like, a little runner. And then, in also typical Jordan Poole fashion, he starts pointing at Kuzma. Like, you were supposed to pick him up. And Kuzma was like, what do you mean we switched? You can't just leave a guy in the middle of the floor. And there's Jordan Poole pointing a finger. It was like, encapsulated exactly who this guy is.
Get off my guy.
He can score. Ne's a player, but he'll never get the other part of basketball. Never.
Well, that wasn't what made him effective. He was never Lindsey Hunter. Like, he's not a guy that's just going to lock you up. Oh, he's a pretty good defender back in the day. But Jordan Poole does what he does. We're going to see it tonight because he's probably going to get 20 shots up. Question is how many he makes. All right, Austin's in San Jose has been hanging on patiently. Austin, a voice of reason for this show. Please get in here, Austin. Good morning. What's going on?
Good morning, fellas. My favorite guys on Saturday. Listen, I can't believe, Dan, you don't know what the game is tonight. You're going to be, unfortunately, having to talk about the Warriors when my Commanders are on. They're playing Detroit, bro.
Oh, no.
So,
good luck, Austin.
Come on. Don't act like you don't know what's going on. But listen, the Warriors, man, I kind of push back a little bit, guys, a little different with the guy talking this week. First of all, having lived, and I got some years on me over you guys, so having lived in the corporate world for a while, this thing was very orchestrated. Three guys happened to be talking the same week about the future. I don't know why guys that are playing, getting paid millions are talking about the future. I mean, they should be focused on the present, and that's winning ball games, making sure the fans get their money's worth for the product. I don't know why they're trying to tell people about the future when really nobody knows the future. This whole 2/3, I would say right now, Evan, and maybe you disagree, 2/3 to 3/4 of the roster won't be here in 2 years, is my opinion. So I don't know why. It's going to turn over, to Dan's point, I think. Maybe not dramatic, but I think it's definitely going to turn over more dramatically than we might think. Steve Kerr will be a lame duck coach next year, so that's reality. I don't think they bring Steve Kerr back. And you guys are talking about that and what that looks like. But clearly there's a misalignment between the coach and the roster. I've kind of felt that for a while, and it's not to disparage the job that Kerr's done in the past, but it's more about the current present. We still want to talk about the past. We want to talk about the future. We don't seem to want to talk about what's now enough. And so I'm a little uncomfortable with players talking about the future of the organization. I don't think that's their job. I think that's Lacob and Dunleavy and the investors' jobs. I don't know why they would be doing that. And also, there might be a very good reason why they might want to do something that the players don't want them to do. Just because Steph Curry, and we love him, would say, hey, we don't want to do anything dramatic. There might be all the reasons why they do want to do something dramatic. Like Dan's been saying, how about if we could redo the roster and bring in some younger guys for the, start making that happen quicker than waiting. Maybe that's the direction it should go in. I mean, we've seen LeBron James a couple years ago, if you guys recall, traded almost half the roster at trade deadline. I think they made the playoffs. So let's not get caught up on this culture. What we can't do, what we shouldn't do. I just wish we stay in the present and try to make this product a good product. Because right now, Dan, I think we'd agree this is not a good product. And I finally I'm not sold on the talent. I don't think it's a very good roster, guys. So that's just my take. I'll keep listening. Thanks.
Thanks, Austin. Good luck to the Commanders tonight. I think, a couple things.
Jaden Daniels is for real, by the way.
He's the only reason I think they can beat the Lions. Although that run game is going to be tough to stop. But Daniels is a dude. A lot of Niners fans, I'm sure, are very jealous. He's worth 60. The thing is, with the Warriors, I agree with Austin that the comments from the triumvirate of Curry, Kerr, and Draymond were calculated. They were intentional. But what I don't get, as I pay off one of my teases, is why the guy who's in the middle of all of it, is Draymond Green. He was the first person to speak. He did the Yahoo story, or was quoted in the Yahoo story with Vincent Goodwill, who wrote about the state of the Warriors. And Draymond's the one that this summer revealed to us that the Clippers didn't want to trade Paul George to the Warriors. He's the one that has talked about us as a franchise, us, the Warriors, doing things down the line. What is a good move? What is a bad move? Draymond Green's been playing GM more than anybody else on that roster and coaching staff. What we heard this week was calculated, was united, but it was in response to Draymond, again, opening the floodgates to whatever the future of the Warriors is going to be. To Austin's point, I'm 100% with him. That's not his job. That's the front office's job. And I find it very interesting that Curry and Kerr have had to answer, and are happy to do it because they love him, for the box that Draymond Green continues to open, whether it's about missed opportunities this summer, wise decisions, even someone like Podziemski and Kuminga, the kind of potential that they have. Draymond's been playing GM for the Warriors for, I would say, the better part of 6 months since the summer, and I don't understand why, because that's not his job.
Is this the first time you've met the young man?
Well, he's not young anymore.
Well, he's not young, but it's Draymond. He's always been this way. I mean,
he hasn't played GM like this, though.
But what he's been over the last couple of years, and maybe it got launched with his podcast, is he wants to be the smartest guy in the room. And he always wants to tell and remind everybody that he knows basketball as well as anybody, including the people that make decisions on respective basketball teams, that being the general managers. He's always using that pulpit to let everybody know that he has a graduate degree when it comes to basketball and what it is that teams are trying to do to him and offenses. What does he always say? Like, I know every offense. I can't figure out Memphis for some reason. Like, I know what teams are trying to do. He's always been that guy who wants to be the loudest in the room and to make sure that everybody is aware that he knows basketball better than most. And so, yeah, maybe he's gotten a little bit vocal in terms of decision-making, but it's part and parcel of who this guy is. And if you ever listen to his podcast, he goes there. He's been doing it for 2 years now on the volume.
No, I agree with that. And honestly, I enjoy listening to Draymond Green talk basketball, talk X's and O's. But he's a player. It's not his job to discuss why a franchise is, quote, good or bad. This is the quote from the story. The beautiful part about being in the space that we're in is Steve Kerr, Steph Curry. Let's stop. Full stop. Those two guys didn't talk about this. Whether you've discussed it or not doesn't have to be public information. They're in the middle of trying to figure out whatever the hell this season is prior to the trade deadline, determine ideally a direction in which you and I doubt. But from there, Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, and myself all disagree with the mortgaging of the future for this organization, saying that we're going for it right now. That's not just him speaking for the head coach and the star player. That's him speaking for the front office. He doesn't work in the front office. And I just find it strange that whenever we find out anything about the Warriors and what they're feeling as a franchise, taking the temperature of the organization, Draymond Green is the Raymond Ritter. Like, he does all the PR for them.
Well, I think you're going to drive yourself nuts if you're going to take someone like Draymond Green, much like that of Charles Barkley back in the day, from a literal standpoint. Like, you can't. That's just, they're always going to be the loudest. They don't necessarily think these things through. And he's sort of the modern day Charles Barkley in a lot of ways. And while all those things that you said might apply to everybody else, not Draymond. It never has. And it's one of the reasons why he has a broadcasting career with whomever, Amazon, TNT, wherever it is that he's going. It's because, and again, I think Barkley sort of paved the way, that he's going to be that one guy while everybody's zigging, he's going to zag. He's going to be the guy who's going to tell you the truth. You shouldn't have said that, but Draymond is the guy who feels as though he has the ability to do that. And he has the prowess to do that because he doesn't have to answer to anybody. And he sort of lives, he lives by those bylaws that, well, everything else is applicable to anybody else in the NBA. That doesn't apply to me because I do and I say as I please. And I think that that's who he's always been. Although, to your point, over the last couple of years, it's been a little bit more vocal, just simply because I think now he has more of a voice via his podcast. But that's Draymond, I think, from the outset.
But these aren't comments from his podcast. Like, this is from the podium. This is talking to the media. This is doing things that all players do.
Well, he was in a one-on-one, wasn't he, with Goodwill?
Yeah, but it wasn't a podcast. It was like a column. But neither here nor there. My point is that it sounds like Draymond is a player that isn't just talking with tenure. He's talking like he has equity. And if that's the case, or that's his goal, that's certainly something. I just find it funny that of the three guys, I mean, it is who Draymond Green is more than Kerr and Curry for sure. I just find it interesting that he's the one who's, the literal mouthpiece for the organization. Like, dude, we haven't heard Joe Lacob speak virtually at all this year. I think he's done a podcast with Kawakami after they traded for Schroeder. We heard him over the summer make some comments after they didn't get Paul George in, or maybe it was when they were trying to court Markkanen. We don't hear from Dunleavy.
You're just getting back to Draymond. So I just brought this up. Do you know this guy at ESPN? I can't pronounce his name.
Youngmisuk.
Youngmisuk, pretty good. So the interview he had with Draymond, are you familiar with
how he's a nicer man?
Yeah, but he got into therapy. And he talked about, it was really interesting because he became very candid. And I think even there, he revealed things that probably, I don't think that the NBA that had this sort of, wasn't a contract, but they had this sort of these sessions with him that included, like, it was almost like a tribunal. They had like 7 people on the Zoom, and there was Draymond. And Draymond talked about very openly about what was discussed and how he wanted to continue these Zoom meetings for therapeutic reasons, even though the mandate had been lifted by that of the NBA and he was allowed to return last year. So he's an open book, and he says things that he shouldn't necessarily talk about, but that I think is just sort of to the point of, like, he whether he's conscious of this or not, it's sort of the beast that he's feeding these days of the persona that he wants to be going forward, whether that's a career in broadcasting or whatever.
No, I think it's a good point. I find it interesting, and it's not necessarily bad, but I think that, like, Curry's caught a lot of the brunt from social media because he's Curry. And I also think, to Austin's point, it's like, we got to focus on the present. Well, I think they're trying to. I mean, I think, like, obviously the Timberwolves win is a move in the right direction. You try and win the game tonight. And that's kind of where the Warriors are at. Like, I don't know if I said it on here on one of the post-game shows, but to me, the word of the month is endure. Like, you just got to try and endure this tough stretch and stack as many wins as you can. Because I don't think that a lot of help is coming. And they're also, you may not feel like Kuminga's great. You may not think the Pods is the truth. But, like, they're pretty banged up. Against Toronto when they lost that game, who, by the way, beat the Celtics their next game, they were at full strength. The Raptors were. And the Warriors were missing 4 of their top 8 players. And they're already not a very good basketball team in terms of talent. So they got to try and just persevere. Which is why it's funny that they were discussing not making a move for the future. It's like, I don't really know what you're holding on to. But
I think to Austin's point, and just to go Bill Parcells on you, you are what your record is. And again, the 12-3, I'm just throwing away. This is a team that's 8-17 over its last 25 games.
Sure.
8-17.
But if they go 8-1 over their next 9, you going to throw that out too?
You're still holding on to this. What
I just want to push you.
What is it that gives you? I want to get there too. You know me, man. I don't want to hate on the Warriors, but what is it? I would love to see this through rose-colored glasses like you. Where's the optimism coming from?
The optimism is, I guess, like I'm resigned to the fact that they're not winning a championship this year. So I'm not looking at them as a great team. And so to me, they're kind of right where they should be. Like they're fighting for the play-in spot. It's where they were last year. And the optimism, I guess, comes from the fact that when they play with intensity, I've seen them get to a level that they haven't been at the last month and a half. And I also think we're beginning to see a different sort of attitude from Curry. I do think that he's found a way to kind of manage the bilateral knee tendonitis or whatever he's been dealing with because he's been more consistent over the recent weeks. And if he's giving you production, then you're in games. But I guess it's Steph. That's why I'm optimistic.
And Steph is going to be 37 years of age in March.
Mm-hmm.
And he has to play like an MVP every time out for them to win. And he doesn't.
That's not true.
He doesn't play in back-to-back games any longer. If that's the optimism, I'm out. I love Steph as much as the next guy, but we have to be real here. And there's nothing more than Steph Curry has to ball out for this team to have a chance.
They're 5-2 without him, though.
And no Jonathan Kuminga doesn't help things either. This is about if the Warriors are going to win over an extended period of time, you know as well as I do that Steph Curry has got to be front and center.
But he doesn't have to be great every single night. That's been proven this year.
Well, then who does? Who's your number
everyone
one?
Else?
Yeah, I'm not buying everyone else. And that's the other part of this that I find fascinating. When we talk about you can't mortgage the future, are we talking about draft picks?
Draft picks and really just one player, in my opinion. It's
Jonathan Kuminga. Yeah, so I think this idea that, the future is not something we want to mess with, that might be applicable to Houston. That might be applicable to even Memphis or OKC, but I think we need to reevaluate, the futures of the Warriors is we don't want to mess with any of these guys. I mean, really is Pajemski and Trace Jackson Davis and even Moody and, Jonathan Kuminga hasn't really proven himself, although I'm with you. But, I mean, we have to when you hear that the future is not something that we're going to disrupt when it comes to the Warriors, I think we have to take a much closer look to exactly who those younger players are. This is, again, it's not Houston with, Amon Thompson and all these young Jalen Green and company. I don't see the budding stardom of tomorrow with the Golden State Warriors, younger players.
No, I don't either yet. But again, that's what you have. Like whether you like it or not, that's really all you have. And I think that's why people have spent the last week like relitigating a lot of the missed draft picks or missed trade opportunities. But I also think that's the whole reason why they have their fourth championship. So it's kind of a damned if you did, damned if you don't.
I get a lot of calls.
Let's get to Drew in Sunnyvale. Has been hanging on for a while. Thank you, Drew. Wants to discuss how the Warriors have been run. Drew, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. How's it going? Evan, looking sharp on a Saturday morning.
My man.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, I think this entire week, right, it's all been about what direction are the Warriors heading, right? And obviously a bunch of articles have come out, a bunch of conversation. This entire week has been like literally just about that, right? Mm-hmm. And I wanted to provide my take on it, right? So basically, for some background, I've been working at startups for 10 years now. I've been a part of acquisitions. I work at an early stage startup right now. And the way I look at the Warriors is that Joe Lacob, who is a venture capitalist by trade, runs the Warriors like he's a VC. And let me explain some of the things that he's done and what I think he's going to do because of this mentality. So the first thing is that since Joe Lacob has become owner of the Warriors have bought the most second-round picks. They've literally paid money for the most second-round picks since Lacob has become owner. So why is that, right? Well, he sort of looks at it like investing in a seed stage startup. So he thinks that if I can get more bites at the apple, more players in the system, if one of them hits, and literally just one, the other 10 or 11 that don't hit don't matter. Like they just, in the context of a basketball team, those other 11 sort of startups that he invested in that, drowned out, they don't matter if that one player hits. So that goes into my other point, which is I don't think the Warriors are giving up draft picks in any trade for the foreseeable future, unless it's for a player that's like too good to be true, like a Giannis, maybe even a Zion. You can talk Joe Lacob into that, but I really don't think they're giving up draft picks. In fact, in the Dennis Schroeder trade, they didn't give up a draft pick in the sense that I believe it was Dennis Schroeder and a second, and DeAnthony Melton for another second. So he never gave up a draft pick in that trade, and the reason for that is because he just believes in having many bites at the apple. And this is a fine mentality to have if the people who are under you also have that mentality. However, the reason why there's such a disconnect between the Lacob and the Warriors front office is because they're not startup incubators making it like a tech parallel, right? Yeah. So I don't look at Steve Kerr as a startup incubator. He's more of a CEO of Amazon type of guy who's more of a people manager than developing players, building a company, that sort of thing, right? And that's why I think Steve Kerr is on his way out. I actually agree with the previous caller, Austin, that he's going to be a lame duck coach next year. I think we're all cognizant of that. And Mike Dunleavy is also not a Sam Presti, right? He's not a guy who will value draft picks, value draft capital, and turn that into a viable product, right? So there's this disconnect, and it's been going on for years.
Thanks, Drew. Yeah. Sorry. No, I do want to get some other people into the conversation. We really appreciate the perspective. And you're right. OKC hasn't hit on all their draft picks, but in consecutive years, they drafted Josh Giddey, who's a starter. They drafted Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams in the same draft, and they drafted the other Jalen Williams in the second round. So you got 4 starting players, 2 of which appear to be budding superstars, and you pair them with an SGA, and you're set. But again, that's having draft capital to work with.
Yeah, he lost me on why can't you do that with first-round picks? Why is it that he feels he's making the analogy with? I get it that you just need, as a VC, you just want to get that. You'll fund a bunch of companies, and you just need one of them to hit. I understand that, but why is it in the second round? Why not put all those eggs in the basket and chase first-round picks?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Well, there's been second-round picks. Well, Draymond Green is obviously a great example. Nikola Jokic is a second-round pick. But those, I think you're right. Those are more comets than stars. Let's try and squeeze Coach in Vallejo if we can in before the break here. Coach has been hanging on patiently. Coach, good morning. What's going on? How are you?
Good morning, Evan and Dan. You both are great. Happy morning to you.
Thank you.
I agree with Dan. I'm going to get to that point in the second part of my comment. The first part is that, Kerr doesn't adapt to the players that he has. He always wants the players to adapt to his system instead of coaching the players in the way that they were brought up. In the example, he tells Kuminga not to take contested 15-footers. Well, that's what made Kuminga the number one high school player in the country, is by taking contested 15-footers. Kawhi Leonard or DeMar DeRozan could never play for Steve Kerr because he'll tell them to pass the ball out to Curry and let him shoot the three-point shot. Now, to agree with Dan on his point, Draymond is excellent in evaluating players and how to play the game. I think he'll make a great general manager or coach. If it wasn't for Draymond, Kuminga wouldn't be where he is now. Draymond is the one that kept telling management over and over, play Kuminga. Iguodala said, if I play before Kuminga, something's wrong with the system. You need a Draymond. You need a Iguodala. These type of guys are excellent at evaluating basketball talent. And that's why Draymond can't stop himself for talking so much basketball. He knows a lot of basketball. I think he's a better coach and a better general manager than Dunleavy and Steve Kerr. But I wish, lastly, I want to say, if you had Derrick Henry for working with Steve Kerr, he'd make it a passing team instead of giving the ball to Derrick Henry, okay? Instead of adopting to the player. So that's the problem he's having with Kuminga. Kuminga doesn't fit the system, but Kuminga is great at what Kuminga does, and he needs to go about with Kuminga in that aspect. But thanks a lot, guys, and I appreciate listening to me.
Thanks, Coach. Hope you're having a good day. Yeah, interesting. Look, we got to hit a break here, and on the other side, I do want to address kind of this idea of what first can really mean, because I think it's interesting that a lot of people don't value them when that's kind of what the Warriors have been built on. But Dan Devone and Evan Giddings will take a quick break. Be back after this on Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game. 888-957-9570 if you want to get into the conversation.
Shocked you talking to me.
You know what? Let's throw a party this year for the big game.
Hey, we can invite our friends over and all take turns yelling at them.
amazing out there.
Strange.
Well, in New York, you're walking around, you're layered up. So you know what to expect, right? You get the scarf, you get the gloves. I actually rock thermals. You've got multi-shirts on. You cover every orifice. You can't go outside without a hat.
But you swim in the bay.
No, but here it's different.
Cold as hell.
I can't. You have all these microclimates in San Francisco, so I have a hard time gauging how to leave the house sometimes in the city.
Well, there's a microclimate inside the studio. It's like 60 degrees in here.
It's the Arctic in here.
Pasta is in a 75-degree sweltering sauna.
Yeah, that's nuts.
It's unbelievable.
Hey, do you know the leading? Oh, we got calls. Get to the calls.
Well, we do. No, you got something on your mind. I want to hear it.
No, I'm just saying, do you know who the leading vote getter is for the NBA All-Star game? I just saw this.
It's not Steph Curry.
It's LaMelo, who surpassed Steph. That just showed you where we're at in the NBA. Guy shooting one-legged threes, man. People love this cat.
Well, do you think it's because... So have you heard his brother's song, Tweaker?
It's already gotten old, I think.
Well, I think it has, but I think that's the reason why he's so popular. In addition to being, just, one of the young kids' favorites. He is kind of funny, though. Like, LaMelo Ball, I don't think he's, malevolent or malicious in any way, but he's pretty funny. Like, he's an affable kid.
I think all the Balls, the father leaves some things to be desired. I think all the kids are pretty good-natured. I think all the kids they're wired pretty well. Did a good job.
Yeah. The middle one, I don't know.
Lonzo? Oh, LiAngelo. Well, he couldn't make it in the NBA, and now he just signed a huge deal.
Dude, he got $8 million from, was it Columbia or Interscope? I forget which one. But yeah, he just got an $8 million deal for making like a Nelly-type throwback song.
So at the end of the day, Pops was right, man. I got 3 gems here.
Well, the Cavaliers were playing it. It was their victory song in their locker room because Donovan Mitchell hated it during their 15-game win. He might even still be on a win streak. It seems like they always have a double-digit one.
Man, they got smashed by OKC. OKC.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That was on Wednesday.
Curb stomped them.
Yeah, that's going to be...
By the way, it was $13 million.
$13 million?
$13 million deal with Def Jam and Universal Music Group.
Wow.
All right, you and I need to make a hit track, Devone, so we can get some of this LiAngelo money. That's for sure. Let's go to BJ in North Carolina, my favorite state. BJ, what's going on?
Yeah, nothing much, my brothers. How you guys doing, man?
Fan-frickin-tastic.
All right. Okay, well, I'm not going to hold you up, man. I just want to say I listen to your show every day. You have a good show. Talking about my team, Golden State. And the things I say, I don't want y'all to take it personal the wrong way, but I agree with this guy what just got through talking maybe 10 or 15 minutes ago. I can't understand why people blaming Jonah every time you turn around at Jonathan Kuminga not doing this, Jonathan Kuminga not doing that. The boy's the best athlete on his team, and no one can tell me nothing different besides Steph Curry. I know him. I know his granddaddy. Because his granddaddy and me from the same place in Virginia, from Virginia, although I'm in North Carolina. Okay, so what I'm saying is Steph ain't going to always be Steph. He's good. Besides him, John Kuminga is the best player on the team. I always bring up about John Kuminga. The boy's good. There's no doubt about it. Yes, he may miss free throws. Like I told other guys, he got to work on them. He got to work on his three-pointer a little bit more. Besides that, be 22 years old, there's nobody on the Golden State team is better than John Kuminga besides Steph Kerr. And like the guy say, Draymond, I'm not going to hold you up. Draymond Green helped him a little bit in different things. So did Andrew Wiggins. That's why he's getting a little bit better in his free throw. But I just can't understand why everybody wanted down John Kuminga when it comes to Parkinski, whatever his name is, the left-handed guy.
Mm-hmm.
You never hear nobody talk much about him. He can't shoot his way out of a wet paper bag. Then you got Looney can't shoot. You got some more of them out there can't shoot, but it's always John Kuminga. And so I'm not trying to damn you guys, but people should lay off for John Kuminga because the boy is good. And I promise you one day, I do believe he's going to be a star or a superstar. That's all I have to say. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you, BJ. Appreciate it. Hope everything's good out east. Yeah, I don't... Well, I will say this. During his absence, and even to some extent Pods a little bit, you can see that this team needs to get younger and faster. Like, them not being on the court, mainly Kuminga, it's pretty noticeable.
Yeah. And that's why the Warriors are where they're at. is that their two best players are old.
Who's their second best player?
Draymond.
You sure?
Well,
no, I think it's an open-ended
that's part
question.
Of the problem is that, I think he's their best player. Well, or maybe Kuminga. You know what it is
Wiggins?
I'm saying. Is that they're and the fact that Curry. Speaking of which, I don't even Curry should be a starter in the All-Star game, no doubt. But
I think he's second in guard voting in the West.
Yeah, but not playing back-to-back. I don't know. Taken into consideration if I'm on that committee.
Oh, my God. You are not starting the anti-Curry at Chase Center.
Hey, I want to go to
campaign,
I
are
want
you?
to go to can you get me into a party? I have no pull. I know NFL Super Bowls.
You got more pull than I do.
No, I don't know anything about the NBA All-Star Game parties. I'm sure, dialed in.
Well, Nahegan, the head honcho boss here, was talking about different things that we need to do and events that we need to be at. I didn't hear anything about parties. So I
don't want to go
talk to him
to an event. I want to go to, a party. I want to go in, we're thumping. And I want to see some celebs, some A-listers walking around that are here for All-Star Weekend. One of those clandestine parties that nobody knows about, but because we have the broadcasting right to the Golden State Warriors, we've got the inside track on this thing. I could hook you up with the Super Bowl. You don't know what the best Super Bowl party is every year?
The day party.
Thank you. I've told you this.
The day party. I've been to one. I haven't been to the one you're talking about, but I went to one last year.
You get calls.
Real quick. GP2's pop. We might have an in on.
Is having a party?
And Gary Payton's the man here in Oakland. I imagine he's going to have something. But I know someone that knows him. So I might be able to, if he is throwing something, if there is a shindig in the East Bay, we might be able to figure something out.
You want the biggest drop of the day? So this is how cocky I was in Seattle. So I had him on an interview.
That's right.
Before the interview.
Should have known.
Before the interview, I was renegotiating my contract. And yes, this is going to sound terrible. I was the highest paid. My agent said, we not only want you to be the highest paid sportscaster, we want you to be the highest paid personality. Like, forget about news and everybody else. And so I had the cojones to ask GP2. I'm like, hey, man, can you hook me up with your agent?
Gary Payton Sr.
Gary Payton Sr., yeah. I'm like, I need some real players. Like, I thought I was somebody. And he did. He put me in touch with the Goodwin brothers. If anybody knows Eric and Aaron Goodwin, who were LeBron James actually they were his first agents. They represented LeBron James before LeBron James went entourage and got his boys. And I remember sitting down with Eric Goodwin, GP2's agent, and he invited me to his office, and I sat down, and he said, so what sort of money are we talking about? Now, keep in mind, he's talking millions and millions of dollars. He was working Vin Baker and all these guys. And I told him my number, and he just basically looked at me and said, come on, man. You're wasting my time. I'm not going to charge you for the bottled water, but there's the door.
Oh!
It was very short-lived. But anyways.
Oh, Devone got knocked a few inches down that day.
Yes, I did.
You hate to see it. Some of these texts that we've been getting today, they've made me chuckle. No, I don't want to be the next Post Malone. I also am wearing a tie because I have to go to a broadcast later. All right, I'm not going for a job interview. Although, this is something that you taught me.
You look like one of those Mormons that knocks on my door in the middle of the afternoon. Nothing wrong with the Mormons.
There's actually a few that's been on my block. It's been concerning. I don't have my jacket on, which completes the fit. But you've taught me that every time you get on the air, that kind of is a job interview. Like, you never know who could be listening.
Yeah.
So if I go and do this Santa Clara basketball game today, which, whatever, Washington State will be fun. But I got to show up looking dapper, bringing it every single time.
Oh, no doubt.
You can't mail it in.
No.
Never can.
No, not especially when you got Santa Clara and Wazoo.
Oh, yeah, throw the record books out when those two get together. Let's go down to Daly City and talk to Rich. Wants to get into the Dubs direction moving forward. Rich, what's going on? Good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. How's it going?
Awesome. How are you?
Good. Couple quick points. As far as the going youth, Kerr has also mentioned it's a young man's league, but everything he does as a frustrated fan has been killing any momentum that our youth have had. Like when we had the 12-0 run, he would say, "Okay, we're using too much depth here," and then he cut the bench and started using more like his favorites, like a GP2. And it, in my opinion, it killed the momentum of that 12-0 run. That being said, why is it, knowing that that's what he said, why is it, because I've heard it from some of your other announcers as well, why is the idea of going with the youth that we already have considered to be insulting to Curry, given we're not going to be trading for anyone anyway? I'm just trying to understand the logic behind that. And given Draymond's comments as well, I'm wondering, is it wrong to go with the youth? I mean, we already have them there, so why not, invest in what we have if we're not going to trade for anyone outside? And second thing, I heard Jabari Smith might be available because he's fallen out of favor in Houston. I wouldn't mind seeing him as a stretch 5. I appreciate your thoughts.
Jabari Smith is a nice player, but I think the reason why he's fallen out of favor is because Tari Eason is better for what the Rockets want to be, which is a physically imposing basketball team. I mean, so, he's not a bad player. Obviously, a top 3 pick a couple of seasons ago. But I will say that, Rich, you're right in the sense that, like, those are the kinds of players that I think the Warriors have to try and identify. Yes. Players that are projects, or much like with what they did with Andrew Wiggins. I think that's the next move they're trying to find, is a player like Wiggins who is talented, who is younger, who is athletic, but for whatever reason, the situation just hasn't been right, and then they can bring him in and hopefully change
Unlock him.
Yeah.
Unlock, much like Brunson got unlocked in New York. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander got unlocked out in OKC. It happens. It's difficult to do, but that's where I like your thinking. Now you're coming onto my side of the block.
Well, I'm going to jump over the curb in a minute.
You got to look at those young players that could be that star. Draymond Green, to me, where are we at with Zion Williamson? Now, okay. Aside
Back
from
to
him,
Zion.
Forget about Zion and what it is that he did after the windmill dunk at his first game back after being out with an injury throughout the majority of the season. I just think that marriage has to end. But are you out on Zion? Because Zion, to me, if New Orleans is at the point where we got to move on, like this has to end. If ever the quote unquote phrase, someone needs a change of scenery was applicable, it's applicable to these two parties in New Orleans and Zion. I'm willing to take a roller on that guy.
I don't know if the Pelicans want to move him, though.
Oh, yeah, they do. Are you kidding me? Oh, God, he has exhausted every last option. They were done with this guy 8 months ago.
But why?
Well, just for what it is that I laid out. They can't go the back and forth and the injuries, and then, they came out publicly. They didn't have to do that. They didn't have to disclose that he was late for the team meeting or missed a flight, whatever it was.
Well, he got suspended. You have to list the reason why you suspend a player.
But it's gotten to the point of no return now. What do they say in a divorce? It's irreconcilable differences. That's where they're at.
Yeah, but they were just a season removed from...
It's chaos there, though. I mean, not only Zion, everybody. Brandon Ingram. I think
Ingram's the guy that's on his way out. I don't know if they're going to move off of Zion, because also he's not a financial anchor. Like, the way that his deal is structured is they can kind of get out from underneath the money. And that's why I think the Warriors would try and take a swing at him. But to me, that would be this summer. Like, everything that we're talking
That's
about...
fine. Do it over the summer.
Well, but we're still going to have to do shows every Saturday between now and then. My point is, all the big swings or the moves that we're talking about, to me, those are summer conversations. And it doesn't mean that you just give up on the season, but all the trades, or if the Warriors do make another trade, I think it's going to be a Dennis Schroeder. It's not him specifically, but that kind of move. A low risk, high reward. In the case of Schroeder, it hasn't been a high reward. It's just kind of been what you've been. But I think a player you're going to see tonight.
But are those fringe moves making you competitive?
No, but they're improving you marginally. Like, I didn't like the Schroeder move when they made it. I just don't think he fits. But I can't neglect the fact that he's a starting caliber guard, and clearly Podziemski has not been able to grow into that kind of player, and Schroeder moves Podziemski back to where he probably should be, which is coming off the bench. Like, he fills a role for the Warriors, and he's kind of a stopgap because he's not going to be on the team next year. Someone like Jonas Valanciunas tonight, I think, is a guy that makes sense for the Warriors because he doesn't make a lot of money. The Wizards clearly don't want him and have no intention of competing. And he can give you an extra big in the middle. But that doesn't, you're right, that doesn't move the needle. But to me, that's the kind of player that they're going to be aiming at.
That's just making trades for the sake of making trades. That's the old rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. I think it's got to be something a little bit more bold.
Well, Schroeder's helped them win a game or two. He's also helped them lose a game.
I think Zion would be the more bold move. This has to be.
Well, it would be bold.
It has to be, very risky. But you're at a point where you have to take a risk.
I don't think they are.
we see this entirely different. I don't know. I don't get the level of optimism. I think that this is a team this is who they are. Over the last 2 months, they've reared their head and said, hello, we are a sub 500 basketball team. And I think everybody needs to get their arms around the fact that the longer they wait, the more difficult it's going to be. And there's really no easy way out of this. Dynasties are always difficult when they end. This is worst case scenario because you have aging Steph and Draymond, and then you have younger players who we're not really sure if they're any good. And then you prolonging things because of guys like you who believe that, hey, listen, we can still be competitive, and I think we can get in as a 6 seed and maybe a 5 seed, and we could surprise some people. This is not a good basketball team. Is it time for the ID, Pasta? The Golden State Warriors, brought to you by 95.7 The Game, KGMZ. The Golden State Warriors are in a rebuild. They just don't know it. Go ahead, Ev.
I don't know how you can say that, though. They're clearly not. Because
8-17 is how I can say it.
Okay, then I'll throw 12-3 in your face. And
come on, 12-3 ain't real.
Yeah, I don't think 8-17 is because it's happened most recently. But yeah, I also don't think that they're 12 Dan, they're a 500 basketball team. All right. Let me ask you this.
Yeah, how about this?
Why do people think that they are in such a bad spot?
Why are they in such a bad spot? Yeah. To point at one thing?
No, they're a playing team. They're another team right now.
Yeah.
They're not close to being the worst team in the league.
Well,
they're also not close to being the best team.
Because you're investing more in 12-3 than I am. Is why they're not the worst team in the league. If you were to look, if this was the first 25 games of the season and they're 8-17, they're one of the worst teams in the league. You're leaning in more on 12-3 than I am willing to go there.
Yeah, and you're leaning more on 8-17.
Well, I think that leaning in on 8-17 and what it is you're doing at this juncture of the season is a lot more indicative of who you are as a basketball team as opposed to sort of the pretenders in the beginning of the campaign. I think once we get to this part of the season, we're almost at the midway point. We're beginning to separate who's real and who's not.
Yeah, I've literally told you that the Warriors can't win a championship. But that's the prison that you, along with a lot of Warriors fans, are still locked into. That if you can't win a championship, then destroy everything.
No, if you can't win a championship in your Houston, you don't destroy anything. If you can't win a championship in your Memphis, you don't destroy anything. If you can't win a championship and you're the Knicks or you're still a few years away, you don't destroy everything. If you can't win a championship and the future is bleak and you have an old basketball team with no identity, then yes, I think that...
But what is there to destroy if you're telling me there's nothing on this roster?
Well, not destroy, but you do have to make bold moves. And you have to think about a rebuild and investing in the future as opposed to salvaging something this year.
I don't think they're trying to salvage anything this year.
I mean, you just told me well, according to you, if you were running things you'd want to get into the playoffs. You're not willing to make any drastic trades, that you're you're still thinking about this team as being one of the top 5 or 6 teams and could get into the postseason.
Well, no, I mean that's the goal, but you're not doing anything that's going to harm your future. Like I think that's what we learned this week is that two things can be equally true. You can be hyper aware of your franchise's future while also recognizing that you don't just give up on the season.
It's not so much giving up on the season as we both agree that we're both in agreement that they're not going very far, right? They're not going to the Western Conference Finals. If they get to the semis, that would be one of the biggest surprises in my estimation. You may not be down with me, but
No, I know. I don't think they're getting past the first round, even if they happen to sneak in.
So it's not about giving up on a season because there's no season to be had. It's about the future. And the future gets awfully daunting.
But you're telling me there is no future.
There is a future if you address it now as opposed to later.
But I don't know how you're supposed to address it now.
Well,
trading Draymond Green doesn't accomplish anything.
The idea that collectively you recognize that this is a team that is building for tomorrow and not today, because that's part of the problem. I
agree with that.
But when we witness what it is that we saw this week, it's a team again that has no identity. On one day, it's Steph saying, "Look, you can't mortgage the future. We're not going anywhere." The next day, he's like saying, "Hey, listen, I'm one of the most competitive guys. Of course I want to win this year." Well, it's one or the other. And that's the problem. I think that the Warriors have to, and whether it's by making a trade or coming out and saying it, they have to get their arms around who they are. And who they are is a team, again, that I strongly believe should think about rebuilding and getting into the lottery and leaning in on your draft picks.
So tanking.
And no, not tanking. Going to the lottery, you can play it out the remainder of the string with your personnel, and Kerr can coach his ass off every single night. You're still going to be in the lottery, in my estimation. I think there's a good chance that you're going to be in the lottery, and you don't have to sit guys, and you don't have to load manage guys like Brooklyn is and saying, no, we don't want to win. We're not interested in that. The Warriors are going to be very much interested in winning and trying to win every single game. They're still going to be a lottery team, or at least on the fringe of potentially being a lottery team this year.
Yeah, but I actually think we're in agreement more so than you're making it out to be.
I don't think that they're going to tank. And I just don't. The reason why I think you and I are a little bit different here is because I think there has to be a collective agreement, and it has to start at the very top, that this is a team that is not close. And going to the playoffs, in a lot of ways, is the worst thing that can happen to you, because it's going to create this illusion, or you'll become delusional that actually, you know what, we're not that far away. And maybe we can squeeze another year out of Draymond and Steph and these older players, and let's continue to lean in on these kids. That, to me, is a recipe for disaster.
Well, but that's why I think that they've been in such a holding pattern in the last, well, really since Kuminga and Pods both went down. It's like, yeah, I would love to say play the young guys and figure out what you got in them, but they're hurt. Like, you literally can't do that. So, like, they're stuck right now, and they're going to have to lay in the bed that they made, but you can have your eye on the future while also competing in the present. I think that's where I'm at. It's like you can still come out with the fight that they showed against Minnesota while also recognizing that reinforcements are likely not going to come at the deadline. Like a guy, I mean, I throw out Valanciunas, but a player like him, a player like Schroeder, doesn't cost you anything. That doesn't hurt your rebuild or whatever you think they're aiming towards. Like those are marginal moves, and they're not going to turn you into contenders, but they're also not going to hurt your overall goal of whatever it is you're attempting to do, or resetting or transitioning. I mean, I think the Warriors don't have much of a direction, and they're hoping that can be revealed to them. But we do have to hit a break here. I want to continue on the other side because I think it's interesting. Where are the Warriors going? What is the goal for the rest of the season? 888-957-9570 is the number. Dan Devone alongside Evan Giddings back after this on 95.7 The Game.
Hey, it's Willard and Dibbs for Safeway. Enjoy these amazing deals for members. And as always, save up to 20% off weekly with For You and your Safeway app. Mix and match 1 pound.
Figure this thing out. For the 415, no, one of our favorites. The goal is to go to the playoffs and win the championship. You got to win it all. If you're not doing that, what are you doing? Well, I don't think that's happening this season. But if not that, then what? What is the goal? I think that's the question that the Warriors are going to try and answer. Well, they have to answer between now and February 6th when the trade deadline comes and goes. But also, really, what they're trying to figure out between now and the end of the season. Because, yeah, I don't think this is a championship team.
So then who are they, I guess, is my question. And again, just taking in everything from this past week, ingesting all of it, to me, what it spits out and what it is that I get is that this team has no identity. Steph Curry from one night says that, hey, listen, we're not compromising the future. We're not going to be rash because there's no one player that's going to change things. And then he clarifies the next day by saying, look, don't misinterpret. I'm still a competitor, man. Nobody's waving the white flag. Well, then which lane are we in here? And again, I think it's because they have no identification at this point.
Well, to me, it's more philosophical than anything else, right? If you can't be a title team, there are a lot of people that subscribe to, well, you should just tank and try and kind of expedite the process that way. I don't think that's how the Warriors operate. I don't think that's the mindset of Joe Lacob. The goal is to try and be as competitive as you can every single year. Even if your team's not great, you want to maximize it. I also think it's hard to get someone like Curry and Draymond even to lean into like a 2020 type of season where we're just going to shut you down and we're going to try and lose as many games as possible. And we're essentially waving the white flag as an organization. So, you know, they are kind of handicapped by the fact that they have these champions on their team and a champion as a head coach, because I don't believe that it's in their DNA.
You know, it seems like just about every show we get at least one or two callers where somebody will say, hey, the best way and the quickest way for the Warriors to get back, got to think about trading Steph. And we always dismiss it.
Yeah.
As well we should, because it's not going to happen, nor should it happen. But if you to really think about it, and maybe this is where you and I differ, that this is a rebuild, the best way for them to get back to where it is that they want to get to, and that is in the conversation of NBA championships again, Steph really is, at the end of the day, he's your only ace up the sleeve. He's your only, but the 63 mil per with a second apron makes things very, very difficult.
It does. I mean, also, the thing is, I mean, if we are going to go down that road, if you ever traded Steph, it would have to work. Like, you can't do that.
Well, there's no guarantees.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And from that perspective, I don't think the Warriors would ever do it. But that's just me. Let's talk to Jimmy in Bayview. Apparently, he's got the answer. Jimmy, what's going on? Good morning.
Hey guys, great show. Whitey would be very, very proud. So you guys are a good
Jimmy.
combo. So I think in these situations, we got to look at, the next right move versus getting to the championship or this or that. And I think the next right move would be to have somebody come in like a 6'6" point guard, so that Curry could play shooting guard, So 6'6" point guards don't exactly grow on trees, but Zion would kind of fill that void, which is why it's very interesting, because he could run the offense and Curry could, play a Clay sort of role, which is what I see him in more, at the end of his career than an actual creator. And somebody like that, a super penetrator type, and obviously we need height because the Schroeder thing is just, as everybody's starting to see, kind of a waste of time. But, hey, what do you guys think?
Well, I think Schroeder is, they got a lot of stopgap players. I think it was Austin who said this early in the show, and I completely agree. Where the Warriors are positioned well for the future is the fact that they're not financially tied to almost any of these guys except for Curry, Draymond, and Wiggins. They can get off Kuminga if they want. They can get off of Hield. They can get off of Slow-Mo. GP2's an expiring.
But I want to get off of Wiggins, Draymond Green.
Well, but you can only get off of them, I think, if you have players to bring in that are better.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, if you're getting rid of Draymond and Wiggins, you might as well just get rid of Curry. Like,
ooh.
Seriously. I mean, I don't think that Draymond's been that great this season, even when they were playing well. To me, he's been a bit overrated the last couple of years. Wiggins has been good this year. The game in Minnesota was like, where's that guy? But odds are he's probably going to disappear sometime in the next couple weeks. Not literally, but like just on the court. And that's kind of the story of it. I mean, to me, the brightest spot of this season, which sucks because he sprained his ankle, it's been Jonathan Kuminga.
Yeah, that hurts.
And
we haven't talked a lot about that, but that hurts.
It's also kind of indicative of where the Warriors are, that he's the brightest spot of their season, because we still don't really know what he is as a player.
If there was some way, just getting back to Zion Williamson, which I thought was just ludicrous a month ago, and the more I think about it, the Warriors are in a position where you got to take a risk here. And that's one I'd be willing to take. If there's somehow, and I don't, New Orleans is a mess. It's an absolute mess, top to bottom. And I don't know what they would do with Draymond. Maybe they feel as though Draymond could be the policeman and put that house back in order. Maybe they'll want Wiggins. If they do, for whatever reason, because it's so chaotic and they want some stability, what would you do if Zion Williamson was on the table for those two? And it may not even take that much.
For Wiggins and Kuminga?
Yeah. You just lost me because you're pausing.
I actually don't know if I would do that.
Oh, God. I would pull that trigger yesterday.
Dan, he's played 60 games like once in his career. He's been hurt almost every year of his life.
Exactly. He's been hurt since high school, since grammar school. He's hurt his first game in the NBA.
He came out of the womb with a broken ankle. No, I don't know. But it's like, I understand, and that's why he's available. But there's no magic potion that I can give him that is all of a sudden going to guarantee me 70 games a year of elite Zion Williamson.
You're not buying the change of scenery. A new start.
That doesn't change his body. Like, moving locale does not all of a sudden make you
skinny,
more in shape. It doesn't make you less than 295 pounds. It doesn't make you less susceptible to injury. And I'd like to imagine New Orleans has a pretty good medical staff.
And I guess maybe this is a perfect example of why you and I differ a little bit when it comes to the future of the Golden State Warriors. I'm willing to take the risk because you're in a desperate situation. And I don't see a lot of value in Draymond Green going forward. I don't see, and I don't even at this late stage, I don't think you can sugar that trade because people can see that there's clearly warts on Draymond these days. They've waited too long. They should have pulled the trigger on Klay Thompson and Draymond Green before it got to this. Now, Klay Thompson obviously left, but he left as an unrestricted free agent. If they could have traded those two and you just think what it is they could have gotten in return. But if Draymond and Andrew Wiggins, two guys, again, if I'm thinking about the future, that they're not part of it. Zion Williamson, if I hit with Zion and everything that you said is legitimate, but he played all last year, and I know that when this guy's on the floor, I've said this before, there are two guys who are unstoppable, three who are unstoppable in the history of this game, and I mean unstoppable even though you know where they're going. In the history of the NBA, three guys who are unstoppable in the paint. It's Giannis, it's Shaq, and yes, it's Zion Williamson. And if I can get that at age 24, at 24 years of age, now with Jonathan Kuminga.
But you're giving him up.
No. I said Andrew Wiggins.
You said Wiggins and Kuminga.
Did I say Kuminga?
Yeah.
Oh, Draymond.
Oh, well, yeah. If I can,
did I say Kuminga?
Yeah, sorry.
No. Draymond Green.
If I can swap Draymond for Zion Williamson somehow, that is something that I would do. I just don't know why in hell New Orleans would want Draymond Green.
Yeah.
In fact,
okay, my apologies.
Well, no. I think we are on the same page. If I'm going down the list of teams, what team, this question doesn't get asked much, and I don't know why. What team in the NBA wants Draymond Green not named the Golden State Warriors?
Well, that's where it gets a little interesting, because if I'm somebody that's looking to win this year, and I think Draymond is the defensive stopper. If Houston begins to, if they're real, and there's no indications as to why they're not, they're the number 2 seed last time I checked. I don't know who it is, but if somebody feels as though we've just put our chips in the middle of the table, we need a veteran leader, and we're willing to compromise the future because we have an opportunity to win today. The window is open in 2025. If that scenario presents itself, maybe.
But I don't think, like, Steph Curry on another team puts them over the top. He's someone that can catapult, like, say, he was on the Knicks. I think we look at them as a legitimate threat to win the championship. If you put him on, I don't know, a host of teams, Houston maybe even, instead of Fred VanVleet, they're championship contenders. I don't think Draymond Green, if you just dropped him onto another squad, is the difference between them winning a title and not. And that's because of where he's at in his own career. That's why I think he's marooned in a way. Like that 4 for $100 million deal that he got from the Warriors is the last big check he'll ever get in the NBA.
Oh, there's no doubt. By the way, great stick by the 925 on the text line. Houston has their Draymond and Amen Thompson. You see this guy play? Him and his brother, what's his brother, Zur?
Asar, dude.
Wow.
Yeah, with Detroit.
Those guys, man, you talk about, they can't shoot worth a lick. High motors, though, man, those kids.
They don't teach jumpers in San Leandro? I think that's where they're from. They're local guys.
Yeah.
Philly's a perfect fit for Draymond. That's from the 510. Yeah, he'd fit right in with a bunch of aging and broken old superstars.
They can carpool. Paul George, Joel Embiid, and Draymond.
They can carpool. Yeah, one of them will probably get hurt on the way over. Oh, well, that's a guy. If you're interested in Zion, what if Embiid becomes available this summer?
No.
Why not Embiid?
No, because he's broken.
Zion's not?
No, Zion's 24.
But he's a broken 24.
Yeah, but okay, they're both high risk.
Yes.
I'd rather risk Zion Williamson than I would Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid is never going to be the same guy. That I know. His knees are shot.
I think if I'm going to risk one or the other, it would be Joel Embiid.
Okay.
Yeah, that
because again, I'm
that's
thinking
someone that actually might be available this summer.
That see again.
Ooh.
Well, the problem is that this is why you and I are not on the same page. Is because if you're going to rebuild, you got to think young and risk in going younger. Miss with the younger player, not with the guy who's in his early 30s with bad knees that never reached his potential with good basketball teams in Philadelphia. You got to think about when you're rebuilding, you're always investing, whether it's a draft pick or younger players. And that's why the Joel Embiids, the Paul George, the Lauri Markkanens are never a fit for the Golden State Warriors, who already have Draymond Green and Steph Curry. Go young man.
I hear you. Going young is, look, there's risk either way. And I guess I'm willing to risk it with more of a known commodity. But we can table that, because I actually do think that's a rumor you're going to hear this summer, is that Joel Embiid wants out of Philly. And I bet that the Golden State Warriors will be back in the rumor mill, as they are for...
Well, that would just prove to everybody that they still don't understand. And is it time for the legal ID to have to remind the Warriors as well?
Player. No, we did the legal ID twice, all right? You can only do it within 5 minutes of the top of hour, you're done. Tim in North Carolina, however, is not. 888-957-9570 is the number if you want to get in the conversation. Dude, we're all over, man. I got peeps in North Carolina. Tim's one of them. Good morning. What's going on?
Hey, what's up, guys? Hey, I'm just sitting here listening to her coach, and I just, you guys been around 4 years, maybe longer, but why do we continue to say we don't know what Jonathan Kuminga is when it's about a 40-game sample size? When he gets 30 minutes or more, he averages 21, 6, and 5, and he affects winning all the way back in 2022 when Andrew Wiggins went out for the very first time. Like, he has always affected winning, and we continue to say we don't know what he is, like we don't see with our own eyes. I'm listening to you just now talk about Arshur Thompson, and this is what happens, right? We get fascinated with everybody else. I hear all of the fascination with Franz Wagner. Guys, do the math. When Kuminga plays 30 or more, his averages are the exact same, if not better, 21, 6, and 4. But we always fascinated with what we don't have. And so I'm sitting here, I'm doing some work in the garage, and I'm listening, and I'm like, why do people always say they don't know what he is when they're not paying attention to what their own eyes are telling them? A 40-game sample size over a 3-year period of 30 minutes or more, 21, 6, and 4, guys, I think we know what he is. We exactly know what he is when he gets 30 minutes of playing time. And this isn't just empty calorie stats. He's been affecting Wiggins, go all the way back 2 years ago. Affecting winning, go all the way back 2 years ago when they got filled in for Wiggins. And don't give me the IQ nonsense, because some of the dumbest mistakes on this team that happened from the veterans. And they have been happening for a number of years. So we like to always throw we don't know what he is. Oh, he doesn't affect winning. Oh, he doesn't have IQ. When Steph Curry throwing a behind-the-back pass, no look in the Game 7 of a finals has continued for decades, but Jonathan doesn't have IQ. God, stop it, please. All right, fellas, I appreciate you.
Thanks, Tim. Well, then maybe, I guess...
But we were in on keeping Kuminga, right?
Yeah, I think we both are. But he's right. I think we have an idea of what he is. I guess what I mean by it, Tim, is I don't think he's reached his potential. So from that standpoint, I don't know what the finished product is going to be. And if you're telling me those numbers are who he's going to be for the remainder of his career, 21, 6, and 4, that's nice, but that's not a superstar caliber player, in my opinion. That's not a number one for a team that's a top 4 seed, which is what the Warriors are hoping that he can flourish into one day.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this, you have to put at the feet of Steve Kerr, because Kerr has mismanaged this guy. And I don't go after Curry. He doesn't have a lot of faults, but in this case, I think that if he could do it all over again over the last 2 years specifically, he should have been leaning in on Jonathan Kuminga a lot more, and playing him, not playing him. sitting him, playing him for 18 minutes, then having him play for 30 minutes, and then all of a sudden realizing in year 4, oh, yeah, you are a guy that can get us buckets, and we do need you. I think that light should have gone on a lot sooner for Steve Kerr. So a lot of this has to do with Steve Kerr as to the reason why we haven't seen enough body of work to say, oh, this is who he is. I still think he's a work in progress. Now, you can interpret that as being, a player that's a bit raw, but he is. And Franz Wagner, now, I don't think I never said that Thompson, the kid out in Detroit, is better than Jonathan Kuminga.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, he can't shoot. Neither one of those kids can shoot, but I do like his motor. I think defensively, both of those guys are just wired, man. Those guys they don't give up on anything. But, so don't misinterpret. But Franz Wagner, for example, we know who he is because he went to a crappy team and played right from day one and is now in year 4, and he plays just about 75 to 80 games a year, logging 25 to 30 minutes a contest. And so we know it's much easier to pass judgment on the game of Franz Wagner than it is of one Jonathan Kuminga.
Yeah, but he also played 2 years at Michigan. He played. So there was more of a base. He started 55 Big Ten basketball games before he even got to the NBA. So Tim's right. Kuminga wasn't giving that opportunity. But it's also because I think there was more of an understanding of who Franz Wagner was as a player. You knew what you were getting when you drafted him. And I think that's why Kuminga has been somewhat of a question mark. It's because he didn't have a big G League resume. He doesn't have and hasn't been given a large NBA sample size. That's why I say I don't know what he is. Because he could be this 16-point per game player. He could be the 21-point per game player. He might also be able to evolve into a 25-point per game player. But to me, I don't necessarily believe that process would just be expedited and we would already know who he is if Kerr had played him. Because you have to learn how to... And I do reject a little bit that he was impacting winning basketball 2 years ago. He is raw. And I think they have moved him along at the pace that has gotten him to this point, and it sucks. It legitimately makes me mad that he got hurt right when he did, because I believe that he was emerging in concert with being empowered, probably because they needed him, but he was beginning to turn a corner into that player that I think, more importantly than Kerr, it's the guys on the court that have to also believe that he is the number one or that he is the player that they can rely on. I don't know if he had the trust of Curry and Draymond the last couple of years, but it appeared that this season, and they've talked about it, that he does now have that. And so whenever he returns, which it looks like it's going to be right before the deadline or maybe around it in the beginning of February, I hope that doesn't revert. Then when he comes back, they get him back into the lineup. He's playing 30 minutes a night, and those players trust him to make the plays that he knows he's capable of, even if it involves making mistakes.
Well, it makes it a lot easier if you're a head coach, especially if it's Steve Kerr and you have the relationship with your best players, Steph and Draymond, is investing in the player. And, well, not 2 years ago, but last year. Remember last year when he publicly, or his minions publicly, complained about his playing time? And I, quite frankly, thought that they were right. Every time he was playing, he was balling out, and all of a sudden he'd get DMP'd, and he's sitting on the end of the bench. And then they leaned into him, and he had those, the 20 consecutive games or 20 or more points? And then this is sort of continued over to this year, where he was inserted into the starting lineup, and then all of a sudden he's taken out of the starting lineup, and he goes from 15 minutes a game to 30 minutes a game. It's been a back and forth with Steve Kerr. And listen, to Kerr's defense, we don't know what's happening behind the curtain as far as the relationship between the two or practice or what have you. But certainly to the casual observer and watching the Warriors play and Jonathan Kuminga, that Steve Kerr won't commit to this guy like he will Brandon Podziemski. And I do think that there's something to that he's willing to give consistent run to certain players. But when it comes to Jonathan Kuminga, only of late, when you can clearly see that there's potential for a team that clearly needs to score the basketball, there's only one other guy, or maybe two other guys aside from Steph Curry that can do it with any regularity, and one of them is Jonathan Kuminga. But for whatever reason, for the last 2 years, he goes in and out of this doghouse of Steve Kerr's, and it's a little head scratch.
Well, I'll tell you why on the other side, why I think he's been in the doghouse. And this one, I promise I'll pay off because we only got a half hour. But again, there's one player that I think is in his way, and it might not be who you think it is. Dan Devone, Evan Giddings on Warriors this week. 888-957-9570 is the number if you want to get in the conversation. Do want to wrap up with Kuminga. And again, if you have any goals that you think the Warriors should be striving for, if it's to tank, if it's to swing big, if it's to add around the edges, what do you want to see from the Warriors as they prepare to also welcome Jordan Poole back, who I know Dan really loves. We'll get into that and more on the other side.
Safe travel in the new year starts at Valvoline Instant Oil Change.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
All right, one final segment. Dan Devone, Evan Giddings, Pasta, a.k.a. Steven Risotto with us, as always, trying to solve the Golden State Warriors who play the Washington Wizards tonight. You looking forward to seeing Jordan Poole, Dan?
I am. Look, I got nothing against Jordan Poole. He's a hell of a player.
Yay!
I think it's a bad rap. I think you'd agree.
What's the bad rap?
Well, it's almost like it was his fault for the way that the things ended with the Warriors. I'm trying to prod you.
I just don't think I don't think he's just a guy that sort of pushes buttons. Not mine. I just think he rubs people the wrong way. And I'm talking about teammates. Could be wrong. I just think he's that dude. You know, there's certain people that you're just like,
It's under your skin.
Like, I'd like to punch that guy.
Well.
And you shouldn't.
That's ironic.
Yeah. Nor keep your hands in your pockets. Don't show hands, but again, you know, I understand.
Yeah.
Draymond, I understand. I don't defend Draymond a lot, but I
Oh, my God.
You better be careful.
You better be careful. No, look, it's I can't dismiss the contributions that he made to the championship team. I wish it was able to end a little bit differently. But to me, it was funny, like.
But wait, can we just back up? Because I think that there's. I don't agree necessarily with the narrative that is sort of just this accepted belief that he moved on from the Warriors because of the Draymond Green situation with him on the same team was unsalvageable. And that's the reason why he left the Warriors.
You don't think the relationship was unsalvageable?
No, I don't think that's why he left the Warriors. It's not because of Draymond Green and Jordan Poole. It's because Jordan Poole had no longer played himself into favor of management. And if the Draymond Green thing never happened, I think he would have been shipped out of town just as quickly.
I disagree with that. And look, we'll never know how he would have played or wouldn't have played. But I do think that they had to make a choice. And this guy, which brings me back to my tease from the previous segment, is the reason why someone like Poole is gone. I also think he's the reason why Kuminga hasn't had the runway. And we've blamed Kerr for this, but it's because Draymond's been in his way.
I think he stumped the growth of Weissman back in the day. Now, not that growth was going anywhere, but you remember it was a little contentious between those two his rookie year?
Yeah, he wanted more from him, and Wiseman was a 19-year-old who played like 3 college games. Again, I think we put too much on how quickly we can get these guys to being finished products. It takes time. And Kuminga hasn't been afforded time, just to use him, because the position that he plays or the style that he plays, it's kind of blocked by Draymond. Now, the Warriors have benefited from that for a long time, and he helped them, win a lot. But it's like, I am to the point where, to me, the choice they have to make is between those two players. If they're going to extend Kuminga, I do think we need to seriously consider Draymond Green as someone who comes off the bench.
Or trade him.
Well, I don't know how you're going to trade him. I mean, yeah, but...
Since he has no market value?
Well, not for what he brings you. Like, he's still... Like, Draymond Green's not a bad basketball player.
I bet you, if you packaged him with Wiggins, you could get something in return.
Well, like Levine?
You can't. I told you, you can't get Levine anymore. You'd love to have Levine.
He's think not you for could sale. Get Levine.
That's not enough.
He has like $150 million left on his contract.
Yeah, but that's not enough for the Bulls will get better offers than Wiggins and an old Draymond.
Well, trading your two best, arguably your two best defensive players, I don't know how that makes you any better. For a
well,
guy
you get younger
25.
with Levine, and
quietly he's in like year 11.
Is he?
Yeah,
he's still not 30.
Well, Wiggins is in year 13. And he's like 31.
He's 29 or 30 this year, I think.
But Levine came into the league as a 19-year-old.
Yeah. Oh, he's 30. Levine's having a really big season.
Yeah,
he's
and
really
the Bulls have done what? They're worse than the Warriors.
No, I'm just saying.
We're talking about a bad basketball
team. But don't
team.
put it on Zach LaVine.
Oh. Yeah, he's in year 11. Wow.
That's crazy.
Wow. How time flies. Yeah, he's averaging 24 points a game on 51% shooting and 46% from three.
Hey, who's your starting lineup for the West in the All-Star game? By the way, I'm asking you as a favor on the air, just get me into a party. Just get me into one of these NBA All-Star game parties. I will do my damnedest,
Dan. And
Not an event.
I'll wear the suit and tie. Yeah, how about this? You and I can go talk to a bunch of Twitch streamers that are going to play in the celebrity game because that's all they invite now. I don't even know these people.
I'm sure you can. It's the All-Star game. It's the Warriors. You're dialed into this. Well, if this was the Super Bowl and it was Lee Steinberg, I would take you to that afternoon party. I used to go to that thing. I used to go to the Super Bowl was my thing every single year. And I knew Lee Steinberg. You know Lee Steinberg, they got to do a 30 for 30 on him. They got to do some sort of documentary. Isn't
he the guy that they based
Jerry Maguire.
Jerry Maguire off of?
Yes. He was Tom Cruise. He was the guy back in the day. He was Rosenhaus. He was Drew Rosenhaus. He was, football's version of Scott Boras. He got everybody. And then he had an addiction problem. And he's from here. He went to law school at Cal. He lived up in the Berkeley Hills. That's where he had his offices for years. He and his partner, Dennis Morad. And I know this because when he was at his low point, I was in charge along with Jim Moore putting together this board of directors for the first business startup I got into that had to deal with concussions. And I remember I had to call him and let him know that, we got to go in another direction because we were a startup, and the last thing you want to do is to bring a guy who's bringing baggage, and he was associated with some, as I mentioned, some addictive problems. And now, when you just thought it was over with, I went to his party in Dallas for his Super Bowl, and he marked it as the comeback of Lee Steinberg. I'm like, whatever, man, you're washed up, you got nobody. And what did he go out and do? He gets Patrick Mahomes. You talk about the Reclamation Project. He gets probably the most popular athlete on the planet who he's representing to this day. And you talk about his charting his course. That, my friends, is a documentary that's waiting to be discovered.
And that's the kind of comeback that the Warriors are capable of, Dan. You have to think about, just because you don't have your fastball at the velocity you used to doesn't mean you can't figure out how to reinvent yourselves. That's what we're trying to figure out. How can they reinvent themselves? Okay, it's where we're attempting to trying to turn water into wine.
I think that the best thing for the Golden State Warriors is to get into a lottery. Get some really good, I'm talking single-digit drafts.
But you want LaVine and Zion.
No, I don't want LaVine. I don't want LaVine. I do want Zion. I would take a roller on Zion, but I'm not giving up Kuminga, and I'm not giving up draft picks, and I'm not giving up anything that I would consider an asset. If you want Draymond, and if you want to wash your hands of Zion Williamson, I'm willing to listen. But you got to take something. You got to take my discarded trash.
No one's giving you a diamond in the rough for discarded trash.
But he's no longer a diamond in the rough.
Trades are hard. They're hard because no one is willing to give up what they covet or like for something in return. You got to give something to get something.
And the Warriors don't. Well, that's why this is so difficult. And that's why they waited too long. I don't see this as a quick fix. I'm trying to think, and you never know, because things will present themselves that we can't anticipate right now from where we sit. But as of right now, this is really bleak. And I hate to go there, man. I'm doing the pre- and post-game show tonight. I can go Warriors.
Here's a preview.
I think that it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Well, that's typically how dynasties go. But a lot worse, again, I think the goal is trying to mitigate how bad it can get. And I'll tell you what, if you try to suck, if you look to just tank, then things can get very bad.
No one's trying to tank. This is just not a good basketball team playing at its very best.
Well, but it feels like a lot of people want them to tank because of your point. They're not a very good basketball team, so you might as well just lean into losing.
Well, what does that mean these days? How do you do that?
You shut down Steph.
Okay.
That's how you do it.
Yeah, well, that's not going to happen.
I agree, which is just one of the reasons they don't have a direction. Let's talk to Earl in San Francisco. 888-957-957 if you want to get any last calls or texts in here on Warriors This Week with Evan and Dan. Earl, my man, good morning. How are you?
Greetings, my brothers. Good topic today. I'm enjoying listening to the show. I usually call during the week, the 10 to 2 show. And I've been barred from that show because I called in 22 after the championship and suggested that the Warriors trade Poole, not for Paul, but for Porzingis. And they laughed at me and flushed me and barred me from the show. So, and then Porzingis won a ring a year later. So now I'm calling to tell you that the Warriors need Draymond Green because they have no other enforcer. They haven't had an enforcer since West. And the great Red Auerbach said that you cannot win or be consistent without an enforcer. That's why he went from Jungle Jim Luskatov to Sack Sanders.
Oh, my God.
These were enforcers. And the Warriors need this. Now, Kuminga is a lower tier Giannis, and his basketball prowess is spectacular, but his basketball IQ is low. He's a downhill player like Giannis. I say the Warriors should trade him and Wiggins immediately to Memphis for J. Jackson Jr. I've been advocating for that all year. And so now, question to you as I part is, what do you think is the best trade for the Warriors right now? And if they can't find a trade, I suggest that they send Steph to a contender because they owe it to Steph to send him to a contender like the Lakers. Thank you, gentlemen.
Absolutely incredible.
Well, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. Number one, there was a dude named Jungle Jim Luskatov.
He's talking the 60s.
Dude, I just looked him up. He's a 7-time champ. I didn't know about this guy.
What years, though?
In 57 to 64. Came right after the Korean War. He's from Palo Alto, by the way. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, I didn't either. Went to Oregon. So, his question, though. What's the best trade for the Warriors? I'll let you go first before I
don't know what
bring the party
trade.
down.
He lost me in a lot. I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr., Jaren Jackson Jr. could be an all-star this year. The dude is
he's really good.
I don't know where to go with any of that. What's the best trade for the Golden State Warriors?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's more than one. And you're limited because you just don't have a lot of trade assets.
Which is why the best trade for the Warriors
is no
trade at all.
God.
It's no trade at all.
No, I'm with you.
There's nothing that you can do to prevent where this season is headed. And we have varying opinions on where it's headed, but I don't think that there's a trade out there that is going to drastically change the course.
Yeah.
And
you and I are on the same page.
Shedding weight to me is not an option. For Lacob, for Dunleavy, for Curry, for Kerr, for Draymond, for whoever you think is pulling the strings. So, unfortunately, they're in the same place they were last year for different reasons, which is they don't want to cash their chips in for a role player. I agree with that. They're not going to sell at the deadline. Number one, because that's not who they are. Also, don't think there's not much to sell. Unless you wanted to get rid of Kuminga because you don't want to pay him. I think they do. And so the course that they have charted is to just try and wade through these stormy waters. Like that's the course they're on.
What if, again, I've never once have I mentioned trading Jonathan Kuminga or any of their assets when you're talking about their younger assets. I'm not in favor of that. I think we're both, I've been saying that not even this show, but going back in the day, that this is a team that's not a player or two away. So mortgaging the future is ridiculous. I do question, though, sometimes about what that future exactly is, just how good is the younger players in Podziemski and Trace Jackson Davis and Moses Moody and company. But again, if it's Draymond Green and Andrew Wiggins and somebody is going to give me a younger basketball player that has upside, I'm listening. Would that fall under the heading of what it is that you're describing, of this team making a trade, an ill-advised trade before the deadline?
An ill-advised trade, no. But that's why I think that there's not enough out there, at least from what I've seen. And we'll see.
Wait, can we go back to Andrew Wiggins? Because for whatever reason, I said Jonathan Kuminga. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Man, I'm still dealing with jet lag.
Sure.
Again, if it's Draymond Green and Andrew Wiggins for Zion Williamson, what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm doing that because you're also you're hitching your wagon to a talent, but you're also, again, in my mind, and I don't want it to sound like I don't like the guy because I recognize what he's done for the organization. But in many ways, the root of the situation that they're in is because of Draymond Green. I think it's because he's preventing them at that particular position from allowing Kuminga to just become whoever he's going to become, whether you think he's good or bad. I think that...
And how is he doing that exactly?
Because he plays the same position. And
I thought it was Andrew Wiggins that was more in his way.
Well, he's in his way because there's not enough room on the court when Draymond is also on it.
So you can't play Draymond.
Draymond has to play the 5. But Draymond doesn't want to play the 5 because he's not physically capable of playing the 5. And that's the only way that Wiggins and Kuminga, along with other shooting,
But
work
if you
together.
start Trace Jackson-Davis and slide him to the 4, and now Kuminga's your 3.
Yeah, and as we've seen, that's troublesome because Kuminga's not a great three-point shooter. Neither is Draymond. So you have, at most, 2 shooters together. And the only way I think that works is if someone like Buddy Hield plays alongside Steph. Have you come back down to earth with Buddy Hield?
We're not going Chivano today.
Chivano. Hey, he wasn't Chivano in Minnesota. Did you know, by the way, that when the Warriors get 18 or more points from Buddy Hield, they're 10-0?
Oh, God. So out on that guy.
But what? You love Chivano.
That's really,
badass Bahamian.
When you think about the Golden State Warriors and you're throwing around names like Buddy Hield and even in Schroeder and Trace Jackson-Davis and all these, it's like, I mean, what do you expect? These aren't frontline players. These aren't stars. It's not like the Warriors are underachieving. It's like, no. You have somehow gone from a team that had the greatest backcourt in the history of the game in terms of shooting the ball, Kevin Durant, the greatest starting lineup arguably, to now like you're being reliant on Buddy Hield and Dennis Schroeder and players of this ilk to go along with an old Steph Curry and an old Draymond Green. Which is why it's only going to get worse for this team, because it's just, I look at it and no matter how many times I toss this thing in the air and spin it around, it still spits out an inferior team top to bottom when it comes to talent matching up against the best that the West has to offer. Or not even the best, the teams that they're trying to walk down. I would take
the other teams that are in the middle.
I would take
play-in.
Phoenix's roster over the Warriors.
Whoa.
That's saying a lot. I know, but
you would take their best players.
Well, Grayson Allen. We don't have a Grayson Allen.
Well, he hasn't been playing much. He's hurt. But
well, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I got you. Like their potential is higher than the Warriors. Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you there. Let's talk to Chucky D. Wrap up the show with Chucky D. What's going on, Chuck? How we doing? Good morning.
Good morning, guys. How you doing? Listening to your show all the time.
Thank you.
You're right about the Phoenix Suns having a better roster than the Warriors. And you know what? They just got better. They picked up Nick Richards
Yeah, good call.
from Charlotte, a big 7-footer, physical, dominant postman who would definitely help the Warriors. What is wrong with us? Why we can't find a big guy? Or we're not looking for a big guy? It just... I don't know how this whole thing, we can't do this, we can't do whatever. Other people making fantastic trades. They just got Nick Richardson and they give up some second-round picks. And a 27-year-old that could last them for who knows long. I mean, what's going on with us? That's what I have.
Thanks, Chuck. Well, I wouldn't talk to Dan about that because your favorite player on the team is a big man, and he just had 15 rebounds in Minnesota.
Well, he's good, but he can use another big.
Well, you got Kevon Looney.
What's our definition of big? We've been with the Warriors for so long that 6'9" is considered big.
Bigger than us. No,
how about a legitimate 6'11"?
All right, let's be
7-footer.
What do you know
Zach
about
Edey?
Oh God, don't get me started on him.
Are you willing?
No. No.
You don't think Zach Edey is a good basketball
player? He's a stiff.
Wow.
Their best big is Jay Huff. Told you that. I'm gonna stick to it.
No, it's that other kid, Sir. How do you say it?
Santi?
Santi.
Aldama? Well, he doesn't play like the center position. By the way, okay. What do you know about Nick Richards? Like, with all due respect.
No, but they did get. He has some upside. He's not a game changer.
He's tall.
He's
better than Yusuf Nurkic.
No, I guess
not saying a lot.
The point being is that they needed a big, and so they went out and they were active. They were aggressive. Now, again, who knows what it is that he does going forward? But I think to the caller's point is that they address their needs when it comes to a big. How long have we done shows talking about the Golden State Warriors are undersized and they just need somebody who can rim protect year after year? We went through a trade deadline last year that saw P.J. Washington and Gafford sitting there, two bigs that the Warriors could have used. Now, I know that they didn't fit in with the Golden State Warriors scheme, but I think to the caller's point is that the Warriors, they sit on their hands as opposed to someone like Phoenix that addresses their needs.
They made a trade. They traded for Dennis Schroeder.
Oh, come on.
Well, you're acting like Nick Richards is going to take the Phoenix Suns into title contention.
No, my point is...
By the way, he's 27 years old. Like, he's not a spring chicken. They didn't just trade for the diamond in the rough that everybody's looking for. He plays 21 minutes a game for a team that is, God, awful.
Yeah, Phoenix is a mess.
Well, I was talking about Charlotte, but them too. Yeah, Phoenix can't win a basketball game. Finish us out. Brian in Hayward wants to talk about the deadline. What's up, B?
What's going on, guys? So I have been a Warriors fan a very long time. As most callers can remember, in the dark days in the early 2000s, most Bay Area fans refer to that as the Kobe and Shaq days. So when I reflect back on the trade deadline, when we are sitting here with, Monte Ellis, Larry Hughes, Danielle Marshall, and Antoine Jamison on our squad. And I'm thinking to myself, can we get rid of all three of them and just get Kobe and Shaq? But at this point in time, I feel like we're the ones with assets, and we don't feel like it because we have such high expectations every year. We've had 4 rings in 10 years. So when we look at that, everybody in the Bay Area is upset that we're not making moves. I mean, the Schroeder move wasn't really a move. It was to keep us from collapsing because we had such high hopes for Melton. I know everybody who knows basketball knows that was a big blow. Some of the more casual fans, especially some of the more casual Warriors fans, have no idea how much help he would have been had he been healthy. And whatever they did to pull off getting Schroeder here, I mean, I can't think of a better Band-Aid in terms of what we were setting up to do with Melton in the backcourt after losing Clay and getting a shooter like Buddy Hield, who loved the guy, man, for the first 15 games, but everybody knows he's not consistent. Shooters like that are not consistent, and he needs to come off the bench and, like the microwave, get a couple points up and then go away, because the more shots a guy like that takes, the more he hurts your team. Similar to Clay, I do not think in any way, shape, or form we should give up on our Draymond, Steph, Steve Kerr core. I think we can make some moves.
Oh, sorry, lost him there. Well, kind of like the Warriors, it just cut out. But you can, of course, hear later on today Dan Devone bring you into Warriors Live, and then the Washington Wizards get underway with Tim Roy, as always, on the call.
5:30 tip. We got you at 4:30.
Yes, sir. Dan Devone, my man, as always, appreciate you having, I was going to say having us back, and that's not really the way to end this thing. But, Dan, I appreciate you being with us again today.
You got to be in Santa Clara in like 20 minutes.
No, I really got to get on the road, so I'm going to end it here. Thank you, everybody, for listening and chiming in, joining the conversation on Warriors this week. Big thank you to Steven Risotto. Big Pasta, as always, behind the glass, holding us down. Big thank you to my broadcast partner, Dan Devone. My name is Evan Giddings, saying so long. We'll talk to you in that same place, same time next Saturday, 9 to noon, 95.7 The Game.
Hey, it's Willard and Dibbs for Safeway. Enjoy these amazing deals for members.